The sprinters have had their fun, the rest day is done, and it's into the mountains they come. The next phase of the Tour de France is about to get underway, and the landscape has changed. Welcome to stage 10 of the Tour de France. Matthew Keenan and Robbie McEwen with you as the race ventures into the mountains. The yellow jersey still on the shoulders of Greg Van Avermaet, holding on to a 43-second lead over Geraint Thomas, then Philip Gilbert, Bob Jungels, Alejandro Valverde. All the other big favourites are well placed. The green jersey, it's a commanding lead for Peter Sagan ahead of Fernando Gaviria. King of the Mountains classification, Tom Scoyens has a 2-point lead over Sylvain Chavanel and Dion Smith. That will all change today. White jersey for the best young rider. It is Søren Kragh Andersen, the Dane, with a 7-minute lead. The drama of the pavé, faces strewn in dust. Time for the showers and then the transfer on the rest day. In fact, they flew on the Sunday night so they could have the rest day based in Annecy as the riders did a recovery ride, if possible, to get ready for the mountains. Unfortunately for this man, Jens Kerkelaer, it was tour over. Let's now take a look at the course, 158.5 kilometres, and it gets underway with the introductory Category 4 climb as they leave Annecy, and then gets into the first serious mountains of the race. Our first Category 1 climb then followed by the Oars category climb of the Guillière, and that has a 1.8 kilometre stretch of dirt road. It's then over some of the most famed climbs in the sport, including the Col de Colombier, to finish at Le Grand Bornand, which is a regular destination for the Tour de France. Robbie, the sprinters, for them now, it is survival. They have to wait a while before they get their chance to dispute the stage honours again. But now we get to see who the real contenders are for that final yellow jersey.
That's right, Matt. We've had some very small glimpses from our GC contenders on the Mur de Bretagne, a little bit on the way to Quimper as well, but nothing compared to what is out in front of our commentary position at the moment. We are looking straight at the Alps rising up in front of us. So it's a very different beast who'll be performing on these roads. We've seen the sprinters Groenewegen, Gaviria, Sagan. But over the next few days, it'll be all about the likes of Froome, Quintana, Bardet, and all the rest. So many who are still contenders at this point. But as we go through these mountain stages, that group will become smaller and smaller.
This is Serge Pauls now coming to the front for Dimension Data. He and Tom Jelter-Schlachter very active, trying to get into the breakaway. The landscape tells us the story of the brutal stage that lies ahead. And significantly, Robbie, this is the first of 3 really tough days in the mountains.
It will be a super tough 3 days. Tomorrow's stage, such a short one, 108.5 kilometres, but no less climbing than today's stage. It was all packed in to less than 110k. And of course, on day 3 in the Alps, the stage to Alpe d'Huez. But the riders aren't thinking about those 2 days, especially the ones that want to get into breakaway, putting everything into just getting into today's break, as they're about to hit the foot of the Category 4 climb, which may well prove to be the springboard for an attack to get away. So many riders keen on getting into the breakaway. So the instructions are clear. We've got 30 kilometres from race start to the foot of the first big climb. Go with everything, make sure we've got someone in it.
And there's already splits in the peloton with the pace that is on at the front. We've seen mechanic problems as well for some of the big favourites. A crash in the neutral zone. But this is a day of scurrying for wheels for those who miss out at the back. And that, in 3rd position from that group, is Romain Bardet. So he's obviously had a mechanical problem as well, or been caught behind some sort of an incident in the peloton, and is now chasing to close things down.
Another attack from Wanty Group Gobert. There's Thomas de Gendt again. Same group of riders, all just trying their hand, going on the attack. It's marked by Chavanel. Peter Sagan in 3rd position. Again, Dimension Data sending one of their riders up there. Just mark everything. That's Slugter.
Arthur Visho at the back of the group for Group Armour FDJ in the red, white and blue. This is the chase now for number 141. He's the rider that is most notable. Third place finisher at last year's Volta a España, Ilnaz Zakarin, is hoping to get the Russian flag onto the podium as the green jersey Peter Sagan is just letting everybody know how versatile he is.
Sagan just has to let the wheel go here.
Col de Bluffy, category 4 climb, 1.5 kilometres in length.
Sagan, he doesn't go over his limits. Just let the wheel go with that acceleration, but slots himself back in, keeps that tempo, and he'll be hoping it does split over the top. He can pop himself into a breakaway, because after the top of the climb, it's another 10 kilometres to the intermediate sprint, and there is a gap now opening up. 5 in front, 3 chases behind with Alaphilippe, also with Sylvain Chavanel. Tom Jelte Slugter now.
It's Slugter on the front. Arthur Visho can't maintain the tempo. He swings out from second position. Alaphilippe again with the yellow helmet on.
Alaphilippe coming across. Also just behind him was Serge Pauls from Dimension Data, the teammate of Tom Jelte Slugter. Further back in the peloton, all just hanging in there. The group starts to build in number now. And starting to look like in the peloton that they're content with this group. But there's always someone who feels they've missed the boat. And they throw out another attack. Peter Sagan, he pushes the pace on now because he sees an opportunity. And back in the peloton, they're not done yet. Still a couple of riders trying to come across.
At the back of the peloton, we're hearing from Race Radar that Lawson Craddock has been under pressure. 174, Thomas de Gent, he's the rider that got the action started. Dylan Groenewegen struggling towards the back. In this group, South African national champion, there he is, just poking into the pitch on the right-hand side of the screen. That was Daryl Impey, and Robert Geesing, the great Dutch climber, trying to come across. Alaphilippe, he wants it today. Motivation through the roof for Alaphilippe, and he's splitting the group up. He doesn't want passengers. If you're going to get on my bus, you can help the wheels go round.
Well, this is his third attack, Alaphilippe, on the flat around next to the lake as riders are being dropped. Then he attacked on the first little uphill and went across to a group. Now he's gone again off the front and he finds a hill where he can really push things on. And green jersey, Peter Sagan, next man in line. Tom Jelte Slugter behind him. Alaphilippe just waiting. He does want to form a group so they can open up this gap. This is Dylan Groenewegen, double stage winner, but the pure sprinter already in trouble on this Cat 4 climb.
This is early. This is a position that you've experienced in the past. What does he need to do?
Remain calm and just start to ride a tempo that he can handle. Hopefully he can get himself over the top, still within the convoy. A little bit of slipstream. From here on in, honestly, for Groenewegen, it's ride as hard as he can manage, what he thinks he can manage, for the next 5 hours. It's a time trial with mountains in it to get himself home in the time limit. Also, hopefully for him, he can at some point join the Gruppetto. He's struggling today, had a very heavy fall on stage 9 on the way to Roubaix and really hurt his right quadriceps.
Damien Goudon wearing the red number, the most combative. Alaphilippe over the top in first position. Then Peter Sagan, followed by Tom Jelte Slugter. And it is Elie Gisbert of Fortunato Samsic who was at the tail end of that group. But Alaphilippe continues to drive. He is applying the pressure. He wants the break to go and go now. This is Demar at the back of the peloton, fighting for survival. Number 151. He's got his lead-out man with him, number 157. That's Roman Sinkeldam. Sandwich in the middle in the black colours is Michael Hepburn. Returning in pink is Lawson Craddock. There's the top of the climb. They will survive.
They will. Andre Greipel just ahead of them. He's got Thomas de Gent with him, early attacker. And Thomas de Gent, I don't imagine he's having too much trouble with the climb, but decided to stay with Andre Greipel to try and pace him back on to the back of the peloton. Just been under so much pressure as his break forms. Peter Sagan in the group. Oh, a whole lot more too. A lot of riders coming across to form a group of some 20 riders off the front of the race.
The rider there in the green colours from Dimension Data, that time it was Sergio Pales. Tommy Alter-Schlachter is certainly in that front group, but most notable, Bahrain Merida at the front.
Van Avermaet in yellow in second wheel. And number 46 is Amel Moinard, former teammate with Greg Van Avermaet at the BMC team.
And he's a rider with plenty of experience. He's been a King of the Mountains winner at Paris-Nice. This group is flying. Here comes Daryl Impey rolling on through.
And depending on what happens further into the day, Jack Bauer could be very important for Adam Yates. Get up in that break. If he can possibly get over the first two climbs with that group and the peloton shuts down, and he'll find himself eventually riding alongside Adam Yates a long way in to a high mountain stage in the Alps. It's always good to have a teammate up the road just in case. And Peter Sagan, he wants to take the 20 points on offer. I don't imagine there'll be too many challenges to the green jersey wearer,
even if they wanted to.
There's about 1 kilometre to go for the green jersey points. And I think everybody in this group understands what will be happening.
They also need to make the most of the Valley Road before they get to the first of our Category 1 climbs of this year's tour. And it's not too far away. Once they get through this intermediate sprint, all focus has to be on building up that advantage if anybody from this group is to stand a chance of winning today.
We see Peter Sagan, he's just come back off a turn on the front and then slots himself in around 5th or 6th, 7th wheel. He's not coming all the way to the back, 500 metres to go. Just having a check behind. He's got a teammate here, Postelberger, who's going to move himself up to see if Peter Sagan needs a lead out.
I don't think he's going to be able to get there in time.
Seems to be having trouble to get past them.
He's trying to.
Sagan looking, sees him coming.
Where are you, Lucas? Here he is. And now Lucas will do the lead out for Peter Sagan. Right on cue, arriving just in time and making sure that Peter Sagan gets maximum points and extends his lead in the race for the green jersey even further. He now moves out to 319 points, 101 points clear of Fernando Gaviria. It's certainly a lot more relaxed for the team because Richie Porte has crashed out of the race, so there's far less pressure on BMC. Greg Van Avermaet has now got a whole lot of freedom, but so disappointing for BMC, so disappointing for Richie Porte. But he's already spoken to the media and has said the Vuelta a España is not out of the question, and he could potentially challenge for the victory there. And the World Championships this year in Austria, Richie Porte is a real threat on that course. He's done so much hard work to get ready for July. Fingers crossed Richie can recuperate from those injuries and get right back in the thick of it in Spain and at the World Championships in Austria.
Well, Matt, I guess you could say the silver lining for Richie Porte is that even though he's got a fractured collarbone, there's really no other damage. So that should heal really quite quickly. He'll be back onto the home trainer probably within about a week. And then within just 3 or 4 weeks back out on the road. And I would think he could be back out racing in 6 or 7 weeks. So it'll be a race against time to see if he's ready to ride the Vuelta and if the team's prepared to line him up in the Vuelta. Maybe also take into consideration that the words that Jim Okovic said after his crash and how he expressed his disappointment in Richie Porte, and going with the rumours that are swirling about how he's already signed with Trek Segafredo. Maybe BMC, under the rule of Jim Okovic, won't send Richie to the Vuelta and will choose for other riders perhaps that will stay within that program for 2019 as it becomes CCC.
1 kilometre to the top of the climb, Rudy Millard leading, Rein Taramay sitting behind him. Personally, I think Richie Porte needs the Vuelta a España. He hasn't finished one of these 3-week races since the Tour de France of 2016. That's a long time going without finishing one of the 3-week races when that is your career ambition to win a Grand Tour.
I completely agree with you. And for that very reason that you need that going forwards is maybe one of the reasons Jim Okowitz won't want him to ride, because next year he'll be the competition.
True.
Nobble the competition before it's the competition. And we've seen it happen so many times.
It has, many times in the past. Luke Rowe, followed then by Johnny Moscon out of the saddle. Third in line is Jonathan Kasper-Verhoeven. Fourth position, that is Mikhail Kwiatkowski. This leading group is splitting up. The yellow jersey, Greg Van Avermaet, is responding. Daryl Impey is in there amongst them. Well, this is Daryl Impey here, in fact. He's in this group that contains the green jersey, Peter Sagan. This is Guillaume Martin from Wanty Group Goubert. And this is for the lead in the King of the Mountains classification. Whoever leads over the top of this climb is the new leader in the battle for the polka dot jersey. And Rain Taramay is already on the drops. He is ready to sprint. Mollard on the front. Taramay just behind him. Sagan, he can get dropped on this climb and then just descend his way back on. No problem at all. The sprint is on for the top of the climb. It is Taramay who goes first, but he went first, but he went a long way from home, and now he stops. Rudy Mollard has another opportunity to get back over the top of him. Still 400 metres until they reach the top. Neither of them particularly good sprinters. They don't win a lot. Rare opportunity. Plenty of climb still to come. This won't be the deciding factor for the King of the Mountains jersey today. But both of them desperate to lead over the top of the first Category 1 climb of this year's race. Shoulder to shoulder. Taramay on the left in the black colours. It's a drag race to the top. Rudy Mollard, slightly better. He gets the points. He will do. Rudy Mollard, convincing, in fact, in the end. 10 points and our new leader in the King of the Mountains classification. Rain Taramay in second spot. And now the sprint for the minor placings. It's Philippe Gilbert up against David Gaudu. And David gets the points with then slotting in Serge Pauls from Dimension Data. The yellow jersey, Greg Van Avermaet, he just wants to keep on working. It's Lucas Postelberger who is there, the Austrian national champion.
I found it quite curious that Philippe Gilbert was prepared to sprint for the minor points there. But as we've come to see from Gilbert, he'll race for anything. He pipped Peter Sagan on the line in Roubaix the other day after sitting on the run in to the finish, because he just wanted to line him up and see if he could beat him. It's just purely competition for himself.
Seconds, 10 seconds away is that small chasing group, including the yellow jersey of Greg Van Avermaet. And these two are showing all the signs of men who want to wait for that next group so they can work together, as they've still got almost 15 kilometres to go before they hit the base of the next climb of the day.
The top of the next climb coming in exactly 21 kilometres time. And it's only a 16 kilometre climb. 6 kilometre climb, pardon me. So a long downhill all the way to the foot of the following climb, which is the Montée du Plateau de Glières.
This is Emile Monard now coming through to the front. David Gaudu, Rudy Mollard, Serge Pauls, Postelberger, Philippe Gilbert, Lilian Calmejean is there in the black colours of Direct Energy.
So that group really has split over the top. The group with Van Avermaet, Philippe Gilbert, Monard, Gaudu moved away from the rest of the group. And this is really what they did need, to thin the group down, to get a motivated group to push on this next climb. If they're going to survive and fight out the stage win, they're going to need a lot more than the nearly 4 minutes they've got at the moment. But this descent is a great opportunity to open that gap right up, as I expect to see Team Sky take it really quite easy with the likes of Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome behind them.
Serge Powell drifting wide on that climb, and in fact Lilian Calmejean didn't make that split with the group that's chased across, and it's just the one rider from Direct Energy who was the rider that was off the front. Second place over the top of the climb, Rein Taramay. Number 15, Taylor Phinney, tried to limit the losses and did a pretty good job of it for Rigoberto Urán on Sunday. Rigoberto came in across the finish line 59th, directly in the slipstream of Taylor Phinney, and they conceded just on around about 1 minute and 30 seconds on the Froome group. In terms of time of the riders still in the race, Rigoberto Urán was the biggest victim of Sunday. Richie Porte was the major victim, crashing and now out of the race with those injuries. But for those still continuing, it's Rigoberto Urán who's paid the biggest price for the time losses on that stage. Gianni Moscon leading for Team Sky. Weather conditions are ideal, a little bit of cloud cover, but no sign of rain, or it can all change very, very quickly in the mountains. And it's not blisteringly hot. It's warm, but it's not hot.
But as you said, it can change so quickly in the mountains, and it can also be so isolated. It can be absolutely pouring with rain in one pocket of the Alps, and dry, hot and sunny just down the road. So if you're a little bit unlucky and you ride under some of those heavy showers, not on the forecast, but never discount them. This group here, they are holding at about 35 seconds ahead of the chase group. And this is not a very technical descent. It's also not very steep. On one of the bigger, steeper, more technical descents, you'd think Peter Sagan will come back. He'll just roll across that gap and get onto these riders, but it's a real pedalling descent.
You know these roads well. What sort of maximum speeds do you expect to see in the race today?
Well, later on some of the steeper descents, I'd say that the ones with the most intestinal fortitude and trust in their skills will hit over 100 kilometres an hour.
The Strava record on the race so far is Romain Bardet with 136 kilometres per hour. How that happened was he had a bike change throughout stage 9, and he jumped off his bike that had all of his SRM data and so on it. He then got onto the spare bike, got chasing again, back into the group. His bike that still had Strava running on it was up on the team car, and within the convoy, his bike on top of the roof hit a speed of 136 kilometres before he then jumped back onto that bike and rode it through to the finish line, and later uploaded his Strava profile without realising the 136 maximum speed.
Well, hopefully somebody's flagged it.
Sobering package as we remember the past, and are forever grateful for those that fought and provided the freedom, and for the Tour de France to go over this climb for the first time. It is significant given this is the 105th edition of the race, and a great opportunity to pay our respects. Luke Rowe and Gianni Moscon doing all the work for Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas. Geraint Thomas sitting in second position overall. Chris Froome in 8th place in the general classification. Geraint Thomas starts the day 59 seconds in front of Chris Froome overall. Lots of questions being put to Team Sky about who is the team leader, and they've responded in contradictory terms. One response was, there is no team leadership issue. Another response, the road will decide our team leadership issue. Which one is it? Bradley Wiggins is also brought into the debate, and he's put some fuel on the fire.
That's not like Wiggo.
Some fantastic quotes from Bradley Wiggins. He was really stirring the pot. He said if Geraint stays where he is and takes yellow, they'll have a real problem on their hands. And there's a good chance for Geraint in the next 2 days, next 3 days perhaps, to take the yellow jersey. But then Wiggo really did put some fuel on the fire when he said that Dave Brailsford, the team manager, can be divisive in his bid to try and keep the riders motivated. Wiggins said that Dave will be in the ears of both of the riders, telling them that they can win. So as he's got both of those cards to play. Wiggo then went on to say about Dave Brailsford He is quite self-serving. For him, it's about the team winning. It's not about the individuals.
Well, there's a contradiction again. He's self-serving. It's about the team winning. That's his job.
Do you think there's much love lost, though, between Dave Brailsford and Bradley Wiggins?
Point. Much ado about nothing.
The roads will make the big decision. And when you've got Chris Froome, 4-time winner of the race, he has to be the #1 man. And on the Sky team car, the way they put the bikes in terms of the easiest access, the spare bikes, easiest access for the mechanic, in position A, it's Froome's bike. Position B is Thomas's bike. Position C is Bernal's bike. Froome is absolutely the leader. Here are our leaders, a leading group of 8 riders. They are on to the lower slopes of the climb, being scaled for the first time in the history of the Tour de France. This is the second group. Robert Gesink in the black and yellow colours, just putting that bidon back onto the bike. Jon Izagirre at the front in the red colours from Bahrain Merida. Moscon and Rowe, the 2 early workhorses, saving the big climbers for later on. In group of 8 riders, still at 30 seconds ahead of the 12 chasers. This is Rein Taaramäe, number 188 at the back of the group. 46, Emile Monard.
Well, some of those riders in that chasing group have had a free ride all the way down that descent. As we said, it was a pedalling descent. As we see one of the activities on offer here in Glières, way up in the mountains.
That was a perfectly healthy plane, Robbie, and that person just jumped straight out of it. Glières hosting a stage of the Tour de France. We just saw the history of this mountain and the role that it played throughout the Second World War. A significant part indeed, particularly for the local resistance. Savoie Mont Blanc. Quite the advertisement for the region to come and visit here. You can come in winter, quite obviously, and go skiing, but there's lots of good mountain bike riding in this region. And if you want to see how you go against the pros, come and ride one of the climbs in private and then make the decision whether you want to share on a public forum the speed that you rode up the climb. A mountain biker just jumping straight over the top of the breakaway. That was E.T. I want to go home.
Well, you said the mountain biking was good here. Everywhere here.
So's the mountain flying.
His timing was good too, to take the run up at the right time, to be above the group and on camera. Not one we recommend to everyone to give it a go.
Don't try this at home.
Nice jump.
Peloton still under the guidance of Team Sky as they approach the base of the climb.
Question is, did he make the landing? He was pretty quickly out of view.
There'll be footage of it though if he didn't. I'm sure somebody on the side of the road would have captured it.
Well, our breakaway group, 4.8 kilometres from the top of the climb, 4:05 to the peloton. But compared to that first climb, I expect our leading group now to take a lot more time over Luke Rowe. I'm pretty sure Team Sky will be content to leave Rowe on the front until they get over this climb, because once they've gotten over the top of the Glières and then down the descent, there's another smaller climb that's not categorised, takes them through the feed zone, and from that point there's about 37 kilometres to get to the foot of the Col de Rome, and that's where the finale really starts at this stage. So I think they'd like to keep Luke Rowe on board as long as possible, ride to the descent through the feed zone, and then give it everything he's got until the foot of the second last climb, that Category 1. Of course, we get 2 Cat 1 climbs in the final part of this stage, and that's where the rest of the team will take over to narrow down this gap. Not that they're worried about anybody in this breakaway for overall honours. They'll still ride fast behind them, though.
Degenkolb, who got the victory, and what an emotional win it was. One of the best interviews you will ever see in any sport for a long, long time. Still, the 21-year-old, David Gaudu, on the front for Groupama FDJ. He's not worried about the passengers, and they're just 500 metres from the top of the climb.
Well, Rudy Mollard, he'll be starting to prime himself. He was first across the top of that Category 1 climb. The Croix Free took the maximum 10 points on offer as the group is splitting again. Tony Galopin is in second last wheel here with Kalmajan. This is off the back of the main peloton with Roberto Ferrari, Alexander Kristoff.
Here goes David Gaudu from the front. This is Gaudu, the youngster, from the front. Alaphilippe is chasing him, and then Rudy Mollard in third position. The battle for points in the King of the Mountains classification. A rush of blood. His youth got the better of experience. Alaphilippe himself is still very young. He goes over the top. Alaphilippe in the past has been accused by being too active, not patient enough. Gaudu will get the same, but we like what we see. 20 points now for Julien Alaphilippe. That will go close to moving him into the King of the Mountains jersey. Depending on the minor places, as we wait for confirmation as to where Rudy Mollard goes over the top, Rudy should still be in the lead, but only just.
Well, Mollard was just in the background in third position on the road. Then we lost sight of him. Don't know if he hung on to that third place. But with his 10 points on the first climb and a possible 6, 12 in fact, so 22. But Alaphilippe, he didn't score on that first climb. It was actually Philippe Gilbert that tried to go for it as they're on that gravel section. 1.8 kilometres across the gravel.
And Julien Alaphilippe is not waiting. Look at the gap he's opened up. He's gone across the top of the climb. Gaudu has thought, we've finished the climb. Now we wait, work together, don't we? Not if you're with Julien Alaphilippe. You don't get a chance to rest.
Well, Alaphilippe, he might not realise where he is. He's come off the cobbles a couple of days ago, into the Alps, and now what he might think he's on to the roads of Strade Bianche.
The first time we've had gravel roads in the Tour de France since 1987. On that occasion, it was only 300 metres. This time, it's 1,800 metres. And you can see his bike handling skills. A little drift through the corners, but still plenty of pressure on the pedals. He knows how to ride.
Well, that's the go. When you do start to drift in a situation like that, the best thing is power on, and it just helps you correct the bike, keep that drive going forward, helps with the balance. You stop pedaling, it seems to start sliding even worse.
And so many people were delighted to see John Degenkolb take the victory. Former teammates, people that have never been teammates. He was in tears hugging Mark Cavendish when he went across the finish line. Everybody in the race knows exactly what he's been through after that horrific training accident in January 2016.
And man, I'm just looking at the body language of the riders across this section of gravel. Doesn't look like the pace is really on, so still a fairly relaxed tempo being set by Luke Rowe on the front. So not wanting to take any risks across the gravel, just making sure they stay at the front. Tom Dumoulin was also being brought up to the front. And even though the chase isn't on in earnest, I'm sure there'll be plenty of riders there that the GC contenders would also like to start this next descent at the front. As they say, be up front, stay out of trouble. You never know if the peloton splits, somebody crashes, something happens, you get left behind and left with a very difficult chase to get yourself back on terms. It's just about keeping yourself covered.
At the moment, they're covered in dust. Luke Rowe out of the saddle in the centre of the picture for Team Sky. Nick Yassant with a nod of the head. He likes the instructions. He's happy to do whatever Tom Dumoulin tells him to do. This is a problem at the back, Team Sky. It looks like Castrovejo has stopped. And is that... It's not Geraint Thomas. This is Geraint Thomas near the front. Can't see Chris Froome. Michael Kwiatkowski is sitting there in fourth. That's Luke Rowe. It's not Geraint Thomas.
Waltz, it is Froome.
It is Froome. It is Froome with the small mechanical problem. This is Alexander Kristoff now in the white colours. Here comes Chris Froome. Alexander Kristoff wants to hitch a ride. He'll get back on Chris Froome, but he'll spend some energy in the process.
His team will shut things down at the front even more. They're on that uphill section of gravel now. They'll know what the problem is. They'll know he's chasing back on. So they'll try and completely shut things down at the front of the peloton, which in the meantime is great news for the breakaway. I thought they'd be out to 7 minutes by the end of the gravel. Well, with this happening and having to wait for Chris Froome, shutting the pace right down, that is the ideal situation for our break in front.
La mine descendait des collines, camarades. Sortez de la paille les fusils, la mitraille, les grenades. Oh, et les tueurs à la balle et au couteau, tuez vite. Oh, et saboteur, attention à ton fardeau, dynamite. C'est nous qui brisons les barreaux des prisons pour nos frères. La haine à nos trousses et la faim qui nous pousse la misère. Il y a des pays où les gens au creux des lits font des rêves. Ici, nous vois-tu, nous on marche et nous on tue, nous on crève.
So what we heard there was Le Chant des Partisans, the hymn of the French resistance. We saw those scenes on the side of the road, those living statues, and a commemoration of the war and the sacrifices made, particularly in this area of France, but all over.
And thanks to the efforts of the resistance, this region was liberated on the 19th of August 1944. Chris Froome is 100 metres behind. That's the last update. Now he's just made contact. There he is, Chris Froome, with the rider behind him, Fernando Gaviria, the Colombian sprinter with 2 stage wins. And Lawson Craddock, number 13, still there. No problems for Chris Froome.
Just a little hold up in the peloton as the soigneurs, they try to identify their riders, offer them fresh bidons in case they've bounced out across the gravel. It's often the way on the top of the biggest climbs. You see all the team assistants, but they cause a hinderness in themselves. They narrow the road right down because one goes a little bit forward, the next one goes a bit forward to be able to see his riders, then the next one as well. And before you know it, you've got a 2 metre wide stretch of road to get through when the road is in fact 10 metres wide.
Yeah.
No common sense to it, but it happens all the time.
Number 194 in the white colours on the red bike. That's John Degenkolb, just making sure the road is clear for Chris Froome. Still, Froome is doing all the chasing. He's on the radio to his teammates to try and come back and support him so he doesn't waste energy.
And we just spoke about how where the soigneurs stand to hand out bidons narrows the road, causes a bottleneck. And what happened is Chris Froome got all the way back to the peloton comfortably, but with that hold-up, the group is split completely. Now he's forced to do a more serious turn. This is Walt Pouls coming back to get him, number 6. Timing perfect, drop back, re-accelerate. Froome just checking on his own brakes, well, don't know if he's loosening or tightening there.
Here is Chris Froome.
Just an adjustment on the go by Froome, and they'll descend their way back onto the back of the group.
All very positive there from Chris Froome, as you would expect. As for getting Geraint Thomas into the yellow jersey, at the moment, on the road, 7 minutes and 11 seconds behind the current race leader, Greg Van Avermaet. Add another 43 seconds to that. So it's almost 8 minutes the buffer that Greg Van Avermaet has got to try and defend his yellow jersey. Sepp van Mark in the pink colours at the back for Education First Drapac. We don't know how injured many of the riders are in the race that were involved in the falls on stage 9 or falls throughout the first part of this year's Tour de France. Because rightly so, most of them just speak really positively and say, no, I'm fine, won't be any issues for me once we get out onto the open road. But we've seen it in the past. Plenty of riders don't tell the whole story, and it's not because they want to lie to us. It's because they don't want to show any weakness to any of their rivals. And it is a perfectly normal thing to do. By contrast, Dan Martin has been really honest about the level of his injuries. When he's been asked to make a comparison to last year, he said, oh, last year was pretty bad, but this year, it's not exactly a walk in the park. My back is like a pizza. Robert Geesink.
I think Geesink and Guillaume Martin, he's been riding really conservatively. In fact, he wasn't there when it first split, because it split when they were racing for the first big King of the Mountain on the Category 1. He was left behind, ridden back across, but in recent races, and I think back to the Critérium de Dauphiné in mid-June, Guillaume Martin was riding really well, and I think he's a really good chance to leave everyone else behind on these final 2 climbs.
He is a very good climber, and the Frenchman with Wanty Group Goubert was brought here precisely for a stage like this. A couple of years ago, in July, he finished in 2nd place at the Tour of Austria. Now, that is a mountainous race. It's a really tough race. And when Cadel Evans missed out on selection for the Tour de France, when he was riding with the Telecom team or the Team Mobile team, that's a race that he won when the Tour was on. Through the Valley Road, this is Peter Sagan and Lucas Postelberger finally being caught.
So for Sagan, it was all about getting those 20 points on offer for the green jersey. After that, he really did just sit up, and he's been out on what you could term a training ride. Until then, cruising along, just waiting for the peloton to catch him.
Smirking at the camera. Not quite smiling, smirking at the camera. Now leads the race for that green jersey by 101 points ahead of Fernando Gaviria. Lucas Postelberger making his first appearance at the Tour de France. He fronted up to the Giro d'Italia for the first time last year, and he won the opening road stage and got a day in the Maglia Rosa, the pink leaders jersey.
As these 2 riders about to be pulled back in by Team Sky, and the time gap to the breakaway down to 7 minutes and 10 seconds. So Luke Rowe, he is putting it all out there, waves hello. We saw a few days ago Marcus Burkhardt from Bora Hansgrohe. He was up the road and he dismounted, stood on the side and applauded the bunch as they came past, rather ironically. But Gianni Moscon and Luke Rowe now picking up the pace to bring the break back a little bit before they hit the slopes of this second last climb, which is in about 13 kilometres time for our leading group.
Add another 4 or 5 kilometres to that for the peloton, and Rowe and Moscon will ride themselves not quite empty, but pretty close to it, to the base of that climb. And as they're going through the Valley Road, why sit on the front and let everybody into the slipstream? They're leaving just enough room for 8 with the wind coming from the left-hand side of the road.
Yeah, what breeze there is, there's not much of it, but they're not giving anyone a free ride as others are forced to come up on the left. Team UAE for Dan Martin. He's the man here with the bandage on the elbow, and next to him, Asie Douzer Le Mondial for this man in the centre of screen, Romain Bardet.
There's Bardet. Once second, once third, a multiple stage winner in the Tour. And we're also seeing plenty of action further back. Look at others moving around the outside. The Mitchelton Scott team making sure they keep the British climber Adam Yates near the front.
Now, Gilbert goes across to Calmejean, gets the flick of the elbow to help with the pacemaking.
That's pretty cool. I can imagine that is really hard.
I'd be more concerned about it being tethered up to a very old church.
That wasn't particularly secure. You should see the documentary on the French guy that did the tightrope between the 2 twin towers. It is amazing. I can't remember the name of that documentary. If anybody knows, share it on social media. It was absolutely extraordinary. Watch it on a plane where the movies all gel into each other and you can't remember necessarily the names of them. Now coming through to the front, it's the Estonian Rein Taaramäe. He knows that his man, Lilian Kalmajan, has got good legs.
Tom Jelte Slagter is dropped. Tony Galopin is also dropped from that group.
And Emile Monard is the rider in the white colours.
This is Galopin, teammate of Romain Bardet. Now dropped from this group, he'll turn his attention to where Bardet is on the road, and if he can be of any assistance further into the stage. While at the front, blurred pictures, sorry for the breakup in coverage, can happen here in the mountains, but it's the riders from Direct Energy doing all the damage. Rein Taaramäe was the man on the attack, active early before that first big king of the mountain for that Category 1. Now him and Kalmajan tearing this group apart as the peloton now start to race for the foot of the climb.
Yeah, and the gap to the leaders is down to 5:40. AG to Le Mondial now at the front, making sure that they've got Romain Bardet in a good position. This is Taaramäe, the Estonian climber. Gisbert is the first in white. Alaphilippe is still there in blue with the yellow helmet on.
At the back of the group is the maillot jaune, Greg Van Avermaet. First of two climbs. Now at the front of the peloton, Castrovejo does the tempo for Team Sky.
Warren Barguil was attacking out of the peloton. Here he goes, Wawa, the winner of the King of the Mountains classification 1 year ago. That is rapid.
Well, that is a huge attack from Warren Barguil. He's got teammates up the road. That's of no concern. Maybe trying to use them as a springboard. It's a massive gap to ride across. 5 minutes and 18 seconds to the front of the break. But Barguil, he is of no concern to the favourites back in the group. They're content to see him ride up the road. But so much speed on that attack.
As we see the Frenchman going off the front, the documentary that I was thinking of was Man on Wire. Thanks to Dwayne Russell for sending that through to me. Brilliant documentary. Meanwhile, Warren Barguil, he was 15th across the cobblestones on Sunday. You think of Fabien Cancellara and Tom Bonan on the cobblestones, winners of Paris-Roubaix. Warren Barguil wants to win that race one day. And look at what he does in the mountains.
Well, let's see if he can keep that momentum. There was a huge attack. It's one thing getting off the front, getting the gap to the peloton. It's another riding across to these guys. Taaramäe off into the distance. Gaudu on the chase, number 152.
And the yellow jersey has made contact, Greg Van Avermaet. The look across the shoulder from Rein Taaramäe. A searching look.
Gaudu, Boels, Van Avermaet. And Taaramäe looking behind as much as he's looking in front. This is the next group on the road. In fact, this is the fourth group on the road at the moment. Robert Geesink leading Mollard, Alaphilippe, Kalmajan.
And that's Gisbert now that's slipping into the back. The peloton is really thinned down.
Well, the steep slopes of the Col de Rome, they are doing the work. 11 and 12%. Now at the front, Jonathan Castrovejo, behind him, Michał Kwiatkowski, Team Astana with Michael Valgren leading them up for Jakob Fuglsang.
Winner across the cobblestones of Het Nieuwsblad at the start of the year, and then Amstel Gold Race. He's right at the front in the high mountains. Peter Sagan, the green jersey. It's been a successful day for Sagan. Moscon going backwards. His job has been done. Matthew Heyman, number 64. 74, that was Ivetti. Gaviria with support from Tim de Klerk. When
Simon Gerrans out the back.
Klerk?
Yves Lampaert, the Belgian champion, now being dropped. Thomas de Gent still on the back of the group. No, he's in a group that's been dropped as well.
Cole Braley was in that group. Oliver Naesen there. Luke Durbridge in amongst.
Van Dillier as well. It was Marzinski, I think, a bit further up the road for Lotto Soudal. So the bunch smashed on the Col de Rome. Warren Barguil, he's the man on the attack out of the peloton, but he has still got a massive gap to close, and it doesn't look like it's getting any smaller. A big whatever he's got left, and Alaphilippe is alone.
Alaphilippe checks over the shoulder, under the legs. The gap has opened up. The Frenchman is free to fly. Taramay is left searching.
Well, there's the moment. The head drops for Taramay. He was 1 length, 2 lengths, 3 out of the wheel, and Alaphilippe is gone.
This is the grimacing Julian Alaphilippe we've grown to love in such a short career with such a big impact. He's over the top. He leads the King of the Mountains classification, but he wants a whole lot more. Taramay, can he work his way back? Alaphilippe is waiting.
I find that surprising. I didn't expect him to wait for Taramay once he got over the top. He wanted to be sure of having the points. He made that extra effort. But I think from now on, it's no use having anybody with you. It's whatever you've got, whatever you can do. Maybe he's just so confident. Keep him with him on the downhill. Maybe use him a little bit on the initial slopes of the Colombière. Van Avermaet takes points for the KOM. Go figure.
Taramay's not there yet. Incidentally, the main peloton's still 5.5 minutes behind.
Was waiting, not waiting, and Taramay just can't get that gap closed. Another look by Alaphilippe, and the gap starts to open again.
The tank is empty. Taramay's tank is empty. It's only 4.6 kilometres to the start of the Col de Colombière.
Short, fast descent. Alaphilippe down onto the top tube. You saw them just go through quite a dip in the road. It bucked Taramay a little bit. It's the chasing group. Keesing, Van Avermaet, Izagirre, Calmejean. They are 52 seconds behind Alaphilippe and Taramay.
Still Team Sky under complete control. The rider that just gave a water bottle with some food attached to it to Chris Froome is Egan Bernal, the youngest man in the race, having no problems.
Well, no problems seemingly today. He had a few on stage 9. He crashed heavily on the stones on the Roubaix stage as this is Taramay, but where is Alaphilippe? I think he'd be gone in the distance.
There was no point Julian Alaphilippe waiting at all for Rein Taramay. He's just cost himself a little bit of time. Taramay has not done a turn of pace on the front to give Alaphilippe any slipstream. And now through the corners, Taramay has been blown away.
Well, that's why I said before we saw Alaphilippe drop him on the climb, I said 100% he'll drop him in the downhill. Alaphilippe, a noted descender. And Taramay, to put it nicely, is not.
The motorbike with our cameraman on the back.
They can't even catch Alaphilippe.
They need long straights to get the throttle fully open to close the gap, and then they'll lose him through each corner.
The gap to the group of chasers heading out towards the minute now for Alaphilippe. Only around 4 kilometres to the start of the next climb, the Category 1 Col de Colombière, 7.5 kilometres at 8.5% average.
He's so aggressive on the bike, Julian Alaphilippe. By contrast, you could see how timid Rein Taramay was.
You can tell the difference. Someone who's timid, they lean back away from the corner, bring their head back. A guy like Alaphilippe, headlong into it, get the head down, get it low, low centre of gravity, and trust the equipment.
5 minutes and 44 seconds is the advantage for Julian Alaphilippe over the peloton that contains all the big favourites.
Now 1 minute to the group of the Maillot Jaune. Greg Van Avermaet in the chase, 10 seconds over Rein Taramay.
This is Gorka Izagirre, the Spanish national champion. One of the teammates of Vincenzo Nibali. This is Alaphilippe. I feel for the cameraman on the back of the motorbike. He is almost a kilometre now in front. In fact, he is a kilometre in front of the yellow jersey group.
Shaking the legs. He's relaxed. He's thinking, get the legs ready for the next climb, shake it out, get aero, build the gap. Alaphilippe is having a whole lot of fun. He loves this.
Indeed he does.
Others are going down here thinking, don't make a mistake, don't get it wrong, be careful in the corners. Alaphilippe's thinking, this is great.
Yeah, he's screaming, woohoo! Let's go. Here are the chasers, and Van Avermaet is no slouch, nor is Izagirre. In fact, Izagirre is really good, and they're losing time on Julian Alaphilippe.
Some food out of the pocket for Alaphilippe, just a little bit more fuel in. He knows he's still got that climb to come. 7.5 kilometres at 8.5%. It's likely to take him a good 22 minutes to climb the Col de Colombière before he gets another long descent through to the finish.
Downhill racing in mountain biking is frightening to watch, but exciting at the same time. If there was downhill racing on the road, you'd have to put your money on Peter Sagan for the win, and Alaphilippe definitely the next.
He'd be on the podium.
Oh, he's sensational.
He's at the foot of the climb, 7.5 kilometres to the summit for Alaphilippe. Hops up and over the speed hump, losing no momentum. Eyes on the red car.
Tightening the shoes up, ready to start climbing again.
Quick drink, a little bit of ballast overboard, just a little squirt of water off.
And now somehow find his rhythm. 7.5 kilometres, 8.5% is the average gradient. The famed Col de Colombière. It's Alaphilippe on his own. This is Taramay chasing.
Well, I'm afraid that Taramay is not going to see Alaphilippe again.
And again, we're seeing somebody on the tightrope, and that movie that I was referring to, the documentary a little bit earlier on, Man on a Wire, a Frenchman that went on the tightrope between the Twin Towers back in the 1970s it was. Brilliant documentary. This is
most of it downhill.
Rigoberto Urán is losing contacts. Is this the first one to fall away from contention in the race for yellow?
Well, Matt, this is exactly what I was talking about before. Why not have a go? You might find somebody out. And Rigoberto Urán, he's hung on, looked relatively comfortable most of the day. Near the top of the final climb, things are unravelling for the Colombian.
His form has been good. The crash on Sunday has hurt him. Almost over the top of the Col de Colombière for Julian Alaphilippe, and then it's his favourite territory, where he can really get his boogie on as he heads down the other side to the finish line. And he is now the clear leader in the race for the polka dot jersey. Big ring for Julian Alaphilippe. Full gas. Here he goes.
Well, Alaphilippe, he'll be on his way to at least 2 podium visits this afternoon. He will win the stage if he can keep it upright. He'll be pulling on the polka dot jersey of King of the Mountain, possibly with a red number to go on the back of that. But if they gave it to Greg Van Avermaet, I don't think there'd be any complaints either. What a defence of yellow. Kwiatkowski, his work is done. Now it's over to Wout Poels.
Here is the lanky Dutchman at the front. It's stick figures to the fore as we head into the mountains. Yates on the right-hand side in yellow.
Moving up, anticipating the descent still to come. Yates has a couple of times been found out on descents, been left wanting a little bit, making sure he's getting right up the front to track Chris Froome. Froome also doesn't like it particularly quick. He'd like to play it a little bit safer. Froome assesses the competition, looks around, see who's left. What do the faces look like?
Now on the road, there's the general classification virtual. Greg Van Avermaet out to 3:42 ahead of Geraint Thomas. Here comes Jon Izagirre over the top at almost a minute and a half behind Julian Alaphilippe.
Well, head-to-head on the descent, I would rate them fairly evenly. Possibly Alaphilippe will notice that I don't need to take the risks on this descent. I just need to get myself to the bottom and I can roll across the finish line. Serge Pauls with Greg Van Avermaet approaching the top of the climb. 2
Belgians together. They're on opposite teams, but they've got a common interest. Survive through to the finish line. Taramay, 3rd positioner over the top. Plenty of courage today shown by Rein Taramay. Bob was the name at the top of the climb, and this is Bob, and Bob is bobbing, and he's off the back Jongels is in difficulty.
Well, Uran off the back, now Bob Jungels, and he still has around a kilometre to go to the top of the climb. Trying to just hang in at that distance, not lose any more, see if he can ride himself onto the back of this group of favourites. The pace of Walt Pools, that is starting to find a few men out.
The descent.
Get Aero, get to the podium. He's about to be a winner in the Tour de France.
Still just 26 years of age. He's already smiling. He's only just gone underneath the 9-kilometre banner. You tell your kids when they play sport as juniors, have fun. Alaphilippe is at the highest level of cycling in the world, and he's still having loads of fun. He's Peter Sagan in the mountains.
Out of the saddle, re-accelerating again. And he's riding on the adrenaline of knowing he's on his way to a stage win. Nothing hurts anymore for Julian Alaphilippe, riding on pure joy. Van Avermaet and Poels. We don't know yet if they've caught Taramay. They haven't, according to the race computer, but he's only some 20 seconds ahead of them. So Izagirre, he's riding in second at a minute 42 behind Julian Alaphilippe. Taramay at 1:59, Van Avermaet and Poels at 2:20, and the peloton, the Chris Froome group, at 4:25.
And Greg Van Avermaet has been awarded the most combative prize. Alaphilippe has a look of disbelief on his face. Believe it, Julian Alaphilippe. He's the kind of guy who makes his own dreams come true. He works so hard. He takes big risks. The team have always tried to keep the reins on him. Today, they let them go. They're doing more than 60 kilometres per hour on this descent.
Chris Froome's group was just signalled at 77 kilometres an hour. Froome, nice and relaxed as you like, on the race radio, back to the car.
They've caught Dan Martin.
They've caught Martin, but who hasn't got back on this group behind? Uran was dislodged, Bob Jungels was off the back.
This is Guillaume Martin, who was in the breakaway, just caught at the top of the climb and is desperate to stick with them. So 2 Martins in that group.
Here's the chasing group. This will be Jungels, Zakarin. Nieves in this group. Rafael Majka is in this group.
Leading is Bauke Mollema. Next is Rafael Majka. The red from Katusha, that is Ilnaz Zakarin, a team leader. Pozzovivo in red number 58. He's not a team leader. He needs to save energy for tomorrow, not waste energy today. He needs to help Vincenzo Nibali at some point.
From BMC is Caruso, then Walt Pools. He'll just roll his way into the finish. Job done for the day. Those other riders losing significant time, and that is good for Dan Martin, who's the one who really kicked things off.
And now Taramay has worked his way back to Izagirre. It's not a very technical descent, this one.
Izagirre sees him coming, re-accelerates to get himself into the wheel of the Estonian.
They're both exhausted, as you would expect. Sure, the stage has been 158.5, not the biggest that we'll see in the mountains, but this has been a tough, tough day of racing.
Well, they've been out there for 5 hours on this stage. It might have only been 158 kilometres, but it's the hours of effort, and it's been a very intense stage. Right from the get-go, kilometre zero, first attacks. Julian Alaphilippe was on the move with those initial attacks, got himself into the break, and now that little bit of disbelief, this really happening? Am I about to wake up and have it all spoiled? I have to go to breakfast?
Railing the corners, hitting the apexes perfectly. Sergio Poels sticking with the yellow jersey of Greg Van Avermaet, who tomorrow will have a red number to go with the yellow jersey for the most combative rider on today's stage.
Well, that will be a unique look for Greg Van Avermaet.
That was Froome at the front of the peloton, staying safe. This is the chase. Mollema from Trek Segafredo and Zakarin in the red colours of Katusha. 4 kilometres remaining for Julian Alaphilippe.
Well,
He has only ever ridden for one team, Quick Step. He had his first professional victory in just his second season. He's been the winner overall at the Tour of California, stage at Paris-Nice. He's won Flèche Wallonne. He's won a stage in the Criterium of Dauphiné. Now he gets his first stage victory in the Tour de France. This one will be sweet. He's done it with so much character. In the early moves to try and get the breakaway established, had a teammate with him, Philippe Gilbert, just to try and keep him calm. He's calm no longer because the smile is going from ear to ear. The first day in the Alps, and to the beat of his own drum, it's Julian Alaphilippe. Phenomenal.
A heroic ride from the Frenchman.
The race now for second position. Tarame in the black colours. Izagirre in red. The third win for Quick Step.
Now the emotion floods over for the Frenchman. Rein Tarame, he looked to be the man on his way towards victory. Looked to be going the best from that group when he left them. Hauled back in by Alaphilippe and left behind. A great ride from the Estonian from Direct Energy. This will be their best stage result so far on this tour. Been in so many breakaways through this first 9 days of racing, now 10.
Izagirre in second position. It's in the box seat to take second place. He's been in the slipstream of Tarame. The sprint for the minor placings behind Julian Alaphilippe. Izagirre over the top of Rein Tarame, and he will take second.
That will be the second place for Bahrain Merida. Sonny Colbrelli twice behind Peter Sagan. Today, John Izagirre second behind Julian Alaphilippe. Tarame will hang on for third.
And the defensive yellow, Greg Van Avermaet, hasn't just defended, he has extended. Here comes Lilian Calmejean. A good day out for Direct Energy, but bittersweet.
It'll be third and sixth for the French wildcard team. What a defence from Greg Van Avermaet in yellow. The classic specialist. He's been sprinting for the bonification points. He's been up there in stage finishes like he was in Quimper. An integral part of the team's time trial for Team BMC with their stage win.
Bardet sprinting for the line. Dan Martin hot on his hammer. No time gaps between this group, but we will await the arrival of Mollema and Uran. Quintana is in the group, so too Landa. Jakob Fuglsang is there. And David Gaudu from the breakaway wants a stage result. It's Dan Martin who leads them across the line.
Are the other GC contenders, Majka, Zakarin, Mollema losing time, and Jungels is somewhere back there too.
There is Bob Jungels, the Luxembourg national champion, with Caruso behind him. This group conceding upwards of a minute. Mollema in white, Zakarin behind him, then Rafael Majka. That is going to hurt.
Well, that certainly is a big loss for those riders on what was really a pretty straightforward stage for the GC contenders. There's our provisional results. Alaphilippe, Izagirre, Tarame. Alaphilippe just kicking it into neutral, almost really enjoying those final metres, giving away 20-25 seconds to the other two over the final kilometre. That doesn't matter. Alaphilippe's not in it for the GC. He's got his stage win. He shared in the victories of Fernando Gaviria, and now Quick-Step Floors have 3.
There's the stage results. To the main peloton, it was 3:23, and it was Dan Martin who led them home. Taramay, good ride by Taramay in 3rd position, Van Avermaet in 4th.
It's about 53 seconds to that group, roughly. Maybe
Rigoberto Urán. Rigoberto Urán's hopes in this year's Tour de France are over. This now for Rigoberto is already more than 2 minutes he's conceded. He started the day on the back foot as it was. The damage from the crash is no doubt more than what the team led on. Rigoberto is closer to 2.5 minutes. In fact, he is more than 2.5 minutes down on the Froome group. Interview there from Julian Alaphilippe. The first question about what is going through your head right now. And in responding to that, as we quickly look at the general classification, 2:22 now to Geraint Thomas, then Valverde, followed by Fuglsang, Jungels, Froome, Yates, Landa, Nibali, Roglic, and Urán is off in the distance. He said he couldn't really quite find the words to explain the emotion that he was feeling, and spoke a little bit later on about the 4th place finish on the Mer de Bretagne. The legs weren't quite there, and that he did have the plan to get into the early breakaway today. That was part of the deal, and now he's also hoping for a good result in the overall classification for Bob Jungels. Clearly he wanted to thank his family as well, and he was pretty happy for himself.
Very happy for himself, and a lot of people happy for Julian Alaphilippe. He said he was disappointed with his ride on the Mer de Bretagne because that's one he had marked down as that's one I should be able to win. So he felt disappointed from that. He said on the way down, his thoughts, he just thought about how happy he was.
The race is now in the heart of the mountains, terrain that puts fear into the souls of the sprinters and hope into those who are chasing yellow. This is the second of 3 big days of climbing through the Alps. It might be short, but it's brutal. Good things come in small packages. Albertville to La Rosière, 108.5 kilometres, and it is littered with huge climbs. 2 oars category climbs early in the stage, a Cat 2 to the top of the Cormet de Roselon, and then it's to the finish line itself, a climb of some 17 kilometres. Hello and welcome to stage 11 of the Tour de France. Matthew Keenan with you, joined as always by 3-time winner of the green jersey, Robbie McEwen. Mont Blanc in the background, Robbie. Fear for the sprinters just trying to survive, opportunity for the climbers.
It certainly is, and the sprinters, they already cut it very fine yesterday, that gruppetto, the likes of Kittel Cavendish and Groenewegen. But at the front of the race, we started to see signs of who is going to crack in the coming days and who may well have the legs to go on the attack. Yesterday, a little bit standoffish, downhill finish into Le Grand Bournard. Today's stage, it's a big mountain day, a short explosive stage. I still have the feeling a lot of the big contenders have their minds on tomorrow to Alpe d'Huez, and today will be a little bit more about defending rather than attacking the race.
Robbie has ridden the climb this morning, so we'll talk more about the final climb itself a little bit later on, and your expectations as to how it will play out because of the gradients, the road surface and the wind. At the moment though, the yellow jersey Greg Van Avermaet, he said at the end of the stage yesterday, that's the last time for me in yellow. I won't be able to do it again. But what a defence it's been.
Well, a fantastic defence by Greg Van Avermaet, and it's always his form of defence, going on the attack. He's really enjoyed his time in the jersey. Richie Porte crashed out of the race. So there's no reason for Greg Van Avermaet to look at anybody else. Not that he really has in the first part of this Tour de France anyway. But he's done what he came here to do. He said before the Tour de France, I hope to get a stint in yellow after the team's time trial and try and win a stage. He's been close to stage wins, but 6 days in yellow, It's a big feat in itself. But I do believe when he says, this is it, this is the last day in yellow.
It's the longest time a Belgian rider has spent in the yellow jersey since the late 1970s. And it is also the first time since Eddie Merckx in 72 and 74 that the race leader, for 6 days in succession, has extended their advantage. It started from a slender 2-second lead. He just added on little bits and pieces as the race went along. But yesterday was his biggest time game. Albertville hosting the stage start. The last 2 times a stage of the Tour de France has started in Albertville, 2016, 2012. It's been a Frenchman who's won. Pierre Rolland was the winner in 2012, and it was Romain Bardet in 2016. Do either of those two stand a chance of winning the stage today?
I think Bardet has a good chance. He's come through the first 9 days quite well. I think the most important thing is getting to this point of the race uninjured. We've seen what happened with Rigoberto Urán. Lost a couple of minutes yesterday after a fall on the cobbles to Roubaix. A few others battered and bruised, although Dan Martin, how tough is he? He had that really nasty fall, scraped himself up off the road, and he was the only one to go on the attack yesterday, quite near the top of the final climb, but it did dislodge Urán and Bob Jungels. So Dan Martin starting to chip away at his deficit. Not on the biggest favourites like Froome yet, but he's got to go on the attack whenever he can. But Bardet, if he sees a chance today, yes. But I tend to think the climb's not quite steep enough for Bardet. Real power climb, fast. I think tomorrow's the day.
The race is really a group of 21 riders, and that's not uncommon on stages like this one. There's a big effort to try and force the move at the front. There's a chasing group, the peloton again splitting, but it will take some effort to catch Peter Sagan in green. The first intermediate sprint, Robbie, that is not too far away. It's now only about 7 kilometres or 8 kilometres away. Does Sagan go on with it once he gets through that intermediate sprint point?
I think he'll do what he did yesterday, ride himself onto the first climb and then just ride his own tempo, not try and go with the likes of Navarro, Barguil, who really need to then try and push out and create a big gap. I think Sagan will just cruise up and ride through the stage within himself. He's one of the sprinters, one of the very few that doesn't really struggle in the mountains. Well within himself, he chooses which group he rides in. Okay, he can't choose to ride in the front group with the very best climbers whenever he wants, but so handy in the hills, really doesn't seem to affect him too much.
More splitting up at the front, and Team Sky taking responsibility. They are racing as if they have the yellow jersey. Yellow jersey there, Greg Van Avermaet, who's wearing the red number with the most combative prize from yesterday. BMC, they've got Caruso in the breakaway here. Sky know that they'll do no work to try and defend that yellow jersey of Greg Van Avermaet. He will concede the lead today in the mountains, so it's up to Sky to lead the main field.
Looking further back down the road, that is a very large group. It's got itself away from the peloton. It is now on the chase behind these 5 riders in the lead, led by Peter Sagan. And say behind, and there's still more taking off out of the peloton. The Sky going to the front, trying to set a tempo to say, that's it, we're happy with the situation, we're just going to ride tempo. But then we'll find out what the makeup is of this group in front. Is there another little group of 3 riders trying to get across? But it was a very large group that went away. But Sky knows they don't have much time to build up a lead. They'll start riding tempo on the first climb. But like we saw yesterday, it's most likely to be Luke Rowe who sets the tempo, and they'll use him for as long as they can. So expect to see that big group open up quite a large gap.
The rider in the black and yellow colours, that is Roman Siccar. 5 kilometres to the intermediate sprints. Also in this group, for the French, in the white colours, Warren Barguil. So often we speak about the Tour l'Avenir as the race of the future, identifying potential Tour de France contenders. Both those Frenchmen have been former winners of that race, so they are very good climbers. And this, Robbie, is an enormous group chasing.
Well, this is that counter-attack that's chasing behind our 5 leaders. Just look at the size of that group. There's more than 22 riders in that group at first look, and just about every team represented apart from Team Sky.
the King of the Mountains jersey was in there. Julian Alaphilippe in the second group chasing the 5 leaders.
More attacks coming out of the peloton. Look like Direct Energy jumping away at the front there. They've already got a rider up the road. Ever aggressive, that had multiple riders in each break. As we take a quick look at L'Église Sainte-Agathe.
This one was built back in 1674 with a rich Baroque interior, and it's got multicoloured vaults and a really large altarpiece, according to the publication that's got information about that church. 45 seconds on the peloton, but then in the middle there is a big group desperately chasing to get across.
I love this lake.
Lovers in the air for the Tour de France. Number 41, that is Warren Barguil, the winner of the King of the Mountains classification last year. Sagan in green. Caruso and Sagan talking. And Danny Navarro in the red colours for Team Cofidis. The chasers are only 250 metres behind. Sagan suggesting they wait, perhaps.
I think Sagan would probably prefer to push on at the moment, although I wouldn't imagine that if they got caught by the group behind before the sprint, that anyone's going to take Sagan on for those points. He has such a big lead now, 101 points to Fernando Gaviria.
And he must have such a presence in a breakaway. Here are the chasers. This is Julian Alaphilippe on the front with Philippe Gilbert, 2 men who were in the breakaway yesterday.
Well, I can guarantee you that if they're not onto the back of that 5-man break by the time they get to the first climb, Julian Alaphilippe will climb his way across to it in search of more points for that polka dot jersey.
The riders in the race, they know this course. They know exactly what they're in for, because it was raced on in June in the Criterium de Dauphiné. An Astana rider won the stage, Paulo Bilbao. He's on holiday at the moment. He rode the Giro d'Italia, and after winning that stage, he said, I'm not riding the Tour. I want to go on holiday. But there are plenty in here, like Geraint Thomas, Dan Martin, Adam Yates. They rode the Criterium de Dauphiné. They know what they're in for.
Barguil through to the front now, number 41 in the white. Peter Sagan, he is almost counting the points he's about to add to his tally. Around 2 kilometres to go from the sprint. And on the front of the chase group behind is Thomas de Gendt.
Thomas de Gendt, followed then by Stefan Kuhn. And in third position, that's Serge Pals. And you'll note today that the Dimension Data team, they're not wearing the green helmets that they normally wear. They're wearing orange helmets. That is because today is Mandela Day. It was on this day 100 years ago that Nelson Mandela was born, and orange is the official colour of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. And there was a really appropriate tweet that was put out earlier this morning by Reinhard Janse van Rensburg. One of the quotes from Nelson Mandela, which simply said, after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. Perfect.
So appropriate.
Damien Housen in the group for the Mitchelton Scott team. They have ambitions for Adam Yates today. And Damien Goudon at the back for Direct Energy. Another great quote from Nelson Mandela on a day like this says, the peloton and the whole world celebrates his 100th birthday. Sport has the power to change the world.
This group with Julian Alaphilippe, they're not concerned about catching that group of 5 quickly. They know they've got a 12.5 kilometre all category climb coming up. And the best climbers of this group should be able to make their way across that gap. And at the front, Peter Sagan, one more big turn to take the group through the intermediate sprint point. And that will be another 20 points to his tally for the green jersey. He's now 121 points ahead of Fernando Gaviria, who's not in the chase group, so he won't take any points at all.
In the race for the points classification, Peter Sagan now moves to 339 points, which breaks the record for the most amount of points accumulated by this stage of the Tour de France. The record he broke was the record of Peter Sagan.
I was going to say it would have been his own. He just scores on so many stages where your typical sprinters just don't have a chance of getting anywhere near the points, and Sagan is able to get in breaks, survive climbs, score on so many different terrains. That's why coming into this tour, He was the super favourite for green. The chase group making good progress across this gap.
29 riders in that chasing group, and this group is not small either. And there are 2 riders from the Mitchelton Scott team in that group, Nick Alnievite and Damien Housen. For UAE Emirates, Darwin Atapuma is there. There is number 92. So he'll be hoping to get into this group to support Dan Martin later on in the race.
Another man in that group chasing across to the large chase group in front of him. Tony Galopin is up there. He'll be there for Romain Bardet. Galopin also in the break yesterday. And if you look at the map, this is where they're heading. There's that little shortcut along the valley, but they will be turning left and up the Montée de Bissainte. 12.5 kilometres at 8.2%. And pretty much exactly the same down the other side, minus 8.2%. Back into Beaufort. And then they'll turn onto the Col de Prix. Another 12.5 kilometre climb, roughly the same gradient, average of 7.7%. But after they crest that all category climb, they keep going up as a very short downhill before they're onto the slopes of the Courmet de Roseland. Just a category 2 climb, because they turn onto it off the Col de Prix. So it's only 5.5 kilometres of climbing to the top of the Roseland, and then a very long descent until the foot of the final climb. So up, down, up, down, up. That's it.
Peloton now being led through by Jonathan Castroviejo from Team Sky. Out in front, leading group of 5, group of 29, then a group of 12. 46 riders off the front of the peloton.
So a massive group off the front, but the race is now turning on to that first climb. Peter Sagan, for him, the job is done. I'm curious to see how long he'll try and follow this group. Little wave of the hand. He's not going to ride on the front anymore and help set the pace in this group. Probably ride along while the pace is still comfortable, and then see what's happening behind, if there's chasing, attacking, and then fade back through to a place that he's happy with and ride his way through the stage. Already letting a little gap open up there at the back into the wheel across this little flat section.
As a former green jersey winner, what do you make of the performance of Peter Sagan through the mountains yesterday and then getting in the break today? And did you or your rivals ever use that strategy? Thor Hushovd was probably the one that would try that.
Thor Hushovd used to do things like that. He was able to get over a small climb, even a medium climb, or get himself into the break early and get up the road and get points. It made it made life very difficult. We look at the climb, look at some of those percentages. In the middle of the climb is that steepest section, up to around 10%. But for that green jersey competition, what you really hated was someone who was able to get themselves into the breaks on difficult stages, get over a tough little climb, pop themselves in the break and get the points in that fashion. Made life pretty stressful.
No doubt. This is the next group. In fact, this is the third group on the road. In there amongst them, number 16, that is Pierre Rolland. There was a stage winner in 2012 when a stage started in Albertville, where today's stage started from. This is the second group on the road, being led by Thomas de Gendt.
Another man in there, former winner of Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, is Nicky Terpstra in third wheel. So he's made a good recovery from that heavy fall he had on the cobbled stage on stage 9. At the front of this group, he's decided it's time to go straight across to that group. No tempo, I'm just banging across it. Peter Sagan now lets go, rides his own tempo. Job done for the day, apart from getting to the finish, of course.
So now the advantage for the leading group of 4 is out to 2 minutes and 53 seconds. Andre Greipel was with the counter-attack to survive, to get a head start before they reach the climb.
Well, that's a very good move by Andre Greipel. He's got himself out to somewhere approaching 2 minutes ahead of the peloton. So be able to settle into a tempo and pretty easily find himself in the gruppetto. It's a lot easier to drop back into it rather than have to chase it down over a couple of climbs. Greipel having a tough day as well yesterday, along with some of the other sprinters. So he's in a good situation at the moment as the peloton hits the foot of the climb.
I'm sure that sort of move by Peter Sagan and Andre Greipel is the type of move that would have been appreciated, or would be appreciated, by one of the guys that you used to race with early in your career, Jamie Kelly. Jamie Kelly's one of the brothers of Shane Kelly, who was a 4-time world champion on the track. And Jamie himself was a brilliant cyclist, represented Australia on the international scene. And sadly, 7 months ago, he had a stroke, but he is fighting on, as Jamie Kelly always would do. And he was a guy that when he raced, you wanted to earn his respect, because he was a guy that had a presence in the peloton.
He was a large man, a very good road sprinter. But outside of that competitive streak, a super nice guy.
So, Jamie, the cycling community is with you. At the back of the peloton here in the black and yellow colours, number 181, that is Lilian Kalmajan, who was in the break yesterday.
I think Lilian Kalmajan made a mistake, not yesterday, but earlier in the Tour, by getting in multiple breakaways, using so much energy. Then yesterday, when he found himself in a breakaway on terrain that really suits him, he got dropped. I just think he'd burnt himself too much in those earlier efforts. There was a very long, tough day there to compare. I think you've got to choose your days very carefully. Warren Barguil, for example, hasn't been on the attack. He's been waiting until a stage like this one. He's got himself up the road. Let's see if his form's going to be good enough to keep riding away from the Luke Rowe-led peloton and have a crack at the stage win. As and TJ Van Garderen swapping turns and moving away from that chase group of 5 behind them.
And we've seen a reaction with some strong climbers also trying to go across. Paul Polanski was amongst them for Bora Hansgrohe. But TJ Van Garderen is really showing his strength of character. Bouncing back after what was a disappointing Sunday for him as well. He could have been the general classification leader for BMC, but he crashed on the cobblestones. He lost a big chunk of time. He now sits at 15 minutes and 13 seconds down, but his tour would be made with a stage victory.
It certainly would. He's done it in the Giro before, taken a big stage win. So I think that's what TJ Van Garderen really needs to aim for now in this Tour de France. He's coming from 15 minutes back. May well be able to ride himself towards the top 10. But I think he'd much prefer a stage win.
This is Chad Hager. Speaking of the Americans, he was in this big group of 40-plus riders, and now he's just losing contact as the tempo has really increased. Peter Sagan is just doing his own thing.
This is Nicky
Terpstra in the blue.
That was Gilbert. So they've done their work for Julien Alaphilippe, trying to close that gap down on the flat when that big group moved away from the peloton. Damien Housen at the back of the group, so maybe suffering a little bit from that move he made to go across. As he got to the group, everything started to split up, and Van Garderen and Alaphilippe. This is like watching the finale of a mountain stage, watching these two. And they're really eating into that gap, because look at it now, 8 seconds. That was 42 seconds 3 minutes ago.
That is impressive. Julien Alaphilippe has got some real freedom with that King of the Mountains jersey. He wants to defend. He is the 50th French cyclist to lead that classification, and he's gone all out with the red dots on the trim of the nicks. He's got them on the socks, the glasses, and the helmet.
Now, do they sit or do they go up and over? A big effort to get across. They had to make an attack, but the pace they were holding, it just got across that gap so quickly. I have the feeling they could go up and over and keep going, just the two of them. I think at this point it's still a good idea to keep pushing on, not settle into the tempo of that group at the front, because more riders will be making their way across. In such a short stage, we're into the finale. It's 90 kilometres to go. There's no valleys to ride, as we see Tony Galopin. He's been dropped out of that group. Let's see if he can be of some value to Romain Bardet after the top of this climb, if in fact he can stay in front of the peloton to the top. So this is that large counter-attacking group. More attacks coming off the front of it. the Cofidis riders, and is that Nicolas Ede? As we see Mark Cavendish at the back of the race, along with Jay Thompson, number 137 from Dimension Data. So that pace being set by Luke Rowe. It's a bit too much for Cavendish. Now settle into a rhythm and ride it all the way through to the finish. Get himself inside that Bordelais, the time limit, to fight another day. We now have 6 men in the front of the race. 7.7 kilometres to go to the top of the climb. And Julien Alaphilippe is exactly where he wants to be, thinking of that polka dot jersey. Look over the shoulder and a little increase in the pace as well from Alaphilippe. He's not comfortable with the gap they've got over that chasing group. The cars are being moved out of it.
According to the race computer, the gap is only 13 seconds between this leading group of 6 and that big chasing group. And Alaphilippe, number 101 after that impressive stage victory yesterday, is on the attack straight away again.
On this 10% section, TJ Van Garderen, the man setting the pace, Thomas de Gent. Further back, he just loves to ride a good, even, hard tempo. That'll split this group even more as we go further up this climb. Still a very large group, but now missing some. Damien Howson just sliding through the picture, Darwin Atapuma and Sylvain Chavanel, the man in his 18th Tour de France.
There he is, Chavanel, 1:83. But they now hold on to a lead of almost 4 minutes over the peloton, being led by Team Sky. So there's no huge concerns for Julien Alaphilippe in terms of whether they can defend their position for at least this climb and certainly the next one. But the challenge for him is, with such a big group, there'll be lots of others that think, I may not have any points yet in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey, but this could be my chance to start to establish as a contender for that competition.
And in the front of the race, we have a new virtual yellow jersey in Warren Barguil. Started the day, 2 minutes 37. We've got on the computer.
The race computer is wrong, but Warren Barguil is the best placed overall in this leading group. He sits at 11 minutes and 50 seconds down. So there's no threat in this leading group for the final yellow jersey, whoever that may be.
In fact, on the computer, all those times are way out. It's got Van Garderen at 6 minutes, but he's at 15.
And here he is, TJ Van Garderen, now on the front. Conceded a big chunk of time on Sunday. Likewise again yesterday, and now he's looking for a stage victory. And all those team cars, Robbie, trying to get past the peloton across to their men who are in the breakaway.
Well, we've seen how narrow the roads are as well up this climb. They're trying to manoeuvre their way past the dropped riders. It'll be near impossible to get around the whole group. It's at the front where most of the favourites are. They'll be spread right across the road. It's going to be a long, slow process for the team cars to get up the road to this group, where a couple more riders are coming across now. Group led now by TJ Van Garderen. Wave of the hand by Alaphilippe. Come on, keep the pace up. Too many riders getting across.
You can see the damage still on that left knee from TJ Van Garderen of the BMC team. This is Anthony Perez at the back of the group, who's just made contact from the Cofidis team. So they've now got 2 riders in this front group. Plus, back in that chasing group, they also have Jesus Herrera. Here comes Paul Polanski from Bora Hansgrohe. He was an Instagram sensation last year, where on stage 16 he posted a picture of his pins that were just full of road maps. Not an ounce of fat on his legs or anywhere on his body.
So for those who don't understand, a picture of his pins full of road maps, it was a photograph of his legs covered in veins.
Thanks for the translation. Number 92, that is Darwin Atapuma.
I speak fluent Kino.
One of the teammates of Dan Martin. Dan Martin was the only rider yesterday to make any sort of a move at the top of the Col de Colombier, the final climb. Everybody else said that the tempo being set by Team Sky was simply too fast, and in fact it's the quickest anyone has ever gone up that climb in the history of the Tour de France. They couldn't move. The speed was just too high.
Sylvain Chavanel is being dropped out of the group. The man who's already been in a couple of long breakaways on this tour. In his 18th Tour de France. Not able to follow the pace on the Montée de Bissan. Another rider at the back is Stefan Kung, the time trial specialist, the big engine behind BMC's team time trial win. Not in his element in the high mountains. He'd be pretty happy with where he is, though.
At 83 kilograms, it's no big surprise to see him struggling on this climb. And Damien Housen, number 66, was also under a fair bit of pressure.
As was Darwin Atapuma, a man who weighs probably half of what Stefan Kung weighs, just ahead of him on the climb. Gives you a good indication of how well Kung is going in this Tour de France. Back to the front group. Poljanski takes a look back, sees how far behind that next group is. Well, they're at 25 seconds, Pavel.
There's Atapuma's just gone through the pitch at Housen. And this is Guillaume Martin. When the Tour Avenir finished at La Rosière in 2015, he was the stage winner. This is Pierre Rolland. It was a difficult day yesterday for Education First Drapac. A big chunk of time was lost by last year's second place finisher from that team, Rigoberto Urán. Yesterday, he came in 2 minutes and 36 seconds behind the group that contained Chris Froome, Geraint Thomas, Vincenzo Nibali, etc.
Thomas Marzinski, the pole from Lotto Soudal, back of the group. Just next to him was Jérôme Cousin from Direct Energy. Already been in 4 breakaways now on this tour.
And the red, white, and blue of Groupama FDJ, Rudy Mollard is in the break for the second day running.
And for the second day running, Luke Rowe is setting the tempo in the front as Marcel Kittel is being distanced. Dropped out the back of the peloton. No surprise, this is totally for a sprinter like Kittel.
How stressful is this for a sprinter?
It's probably less stressful to be dropped midway up or category climb than it is to be dropped on a Cat 4 before you get onto any of the big climbs, and you're already losing time riding along a valley road where you could have had a nice easy ride in the back of the peloton. So, you know, he's 20 kilometres into the stage, dropped. He just has to ride the hardest tempo he can manage all the way in. The time to stress is later on in the stage when you're really getting a handle on what the average speed is going to be and what that's going to translate to in terms of a time limit at the end of the day. Here at the back of the group, 173 from Lotto Soudal is Jasper de Boost. This is back of the peloton, not that front group, but back of the peloton. Bauke Mollema, number 191, riding quite a long way back. Just up ahead of him, Alexander Kristoff, the Norwegian sprinter, European champion in the all-white colours from UAE Team Emirates.
He had a tough day yesterday, Bauke Mollema. He crashed on Sunday across the cobblestones, conceded that his back was sore, and yesterday he lost 52 seconds to the group of the big favourites. And 191 Mollema doesn't look at all comfortable. Just in front of him is Adam Yates, who's bobbing around, and he rides wherever he likes in the earlier part of the stage.
Well, he's often riding a long way down the back of the peloton. We've seen it right throughout the first 10 days of this Tour de France from Adam Yates. Doesn't like to get up there amongst it and to have to try and battle for position. Everybody's trying to just inch their way up and nervous for the descents. He's happy just to follow along. This is Taramay now at the front of the group.
Taramay is in second position in the race for the King of the Mountains classification. This is an Oars category climb, so there's 20 points up for grabs when they go over the top. 15 for second. Last year's winner now, Warren Barguil. He's yet to trouble the leaderboard for the King of the Mountains classification, but Julien Alaphilippe is doing it in his stride. Wawa checks over his shoulder, and Alaphilippe pounces and will collect maximum points and show just how much power he's got. He's winning going away. Now he's wasting energy. Or does he go on with it, try and force others and split that group? It's too early, surely.
I think it's too early, but Alaphilippe, you never know, because once he goes, he gets so excited about being off the front. The fans are cheering, and he is the absolute current favourite of the French fans. Last year, it was the man they call Wawa, Warren Barguil. When Barguil just made that acceleration, Alaphilippe seemed to go with him without even really trying. And when he went up and over the top, another gear, extra gear on top of that, easily took the points. Barguil comes in for second, and Thomas de Gent, who's also no stranger to the polka dot jersey, third across the line.
And this is his teammate Marzinski, who will get back on the other side. He's riding conservatively to the top and making sure he doesn't go too deep into the red zone.
Well, you can see most of the group completely disinterested in those King of the Mountain points. TJ Van Garderen also in this last sort of six. Caruso as well, his teammate.
One of the questions asked of Julian Alaphilippe after yesterday's stage was, will you defend your position in the King of the Mountains classification? He said he'd think about it. He'll let us know in the morning. Now we know. He wants to take the polka dots all the way to Paris.
I think he was thinking about it all night. Not thinking about will I or won't I, just thinking about it, how he is going to do it.
Thinking about the how. This is the now, and he is showing us how. Sky allowing the group to go again. 5.5 minutes effectively the advantage for the leaders. There are no real threats for the general classification. Mikel Nieve is up there. He's at 7 minutes and 11 seconds behind. He's about the closest to yellow.
This gives you a good indication of the tempo that Sky is setting. Gaviria is a handy climber as far as sprinters go, but if they were really racing up this mountain, he would no longer be this close to the peloton. He will be with them as they get over the top. Pace really gone off. And Sky, they have nothing to defend. They're not leading the race. There's nobody up there threatening to their overall hopes with Chris Froome and eventually Geraint Thomas. So they're just going to ride tempo, wait for someone else to do something, then defend. And if Froome gets an opportunity, I'm sure he'll attack somewhere. I just don't see today's final climb being the place to do it. It's the shallowest gradient of all the three climbs on offer today. There's 4 climbs, 3 proper big climbs. The Roseland, just a Cat 2, 5K, doesn't really count. And Alaphilippe hasn't really gone on with it. He just descends like he does and the gap opens up.
He is just cruising. He's all smiles. He is having fun. Had lots of fun yesterday. He was waving the one finger, celebrating, I'm #1 today. The first Frenchman to win in Le Grand Bournon, and he did it in real style. The drummer to the beat of his own drum yesterday, and didn't he descend so well? He's quick on the way downhill. Number 68, this is Mikel Nieve. He sits at 7 minutes and 11 seconds down in the overall classification. But still, he's no threat to Team Sky, really, when you look long term.
This is Marco Marcato from UAE Team Emirates, just being reabsorbed by the peloton. And this is the back of the peloton. This is Alexander Kristoff, number 95.
And also there, 194, John Degenkolb. Yesterday, he showed that he's not just super strong, as he was on Sunday when he won the stage. He showed he's a pretty good guy. Jay Thompson, his glasses fell off yesterday throughout the stage. Degenkolb was just behind him, stopped, picked up the glasses, rode them back, said, Jay, I think you've left something behind.
Because on the climbs, Jay Thompson, he would have been under such pressure. He would have dropped them and thought, well, that's those gone. There's no way I'm stopping to pick those up. I'll just sacrifice. Little skid there from Alaphilippe. That won't shake him at all. He'd actually find that quite exciting. He'd be proud of that. He'd be looking for the footage this afternoon, asking French television, hey, have you got a clip of me just doing that little lock up into the corner?
I could have gotten it more sideways.
This is the back of that group. Mikel Nieve here, last wheel, and the gap from Alaphilippe back to this chasing group already over 40 seconds.
Mark Cavendish was really interesting after yesterday's stage. He wasn't too keen to speak to many people, but he did make the statement about the risk they take in the Gruppetto. And you'll be well informed to tell us about this, because you're one of the guys who did it amongst the best of your generation. Cavendish said, you see Vincenzo Nibali and all these good descenders that are racing for the general classification, but you've got no idea what the Gruppetto does on the descents. No idea.
You see the pictures of the good descenders in the peloton at the front of the race where the TV cameras are. What you don't see is that the Gruppetto with the sprinters often makes up significant time on the descents. to all the rest of the peloton and the breakaway that's off the front. Used to operating at close quarters, at high speeds, taking the risks. They just take that on to the descents. And Mark Cavendish has been renowned taking the risks and really making up a lot of ground in the descents back in the day with Mark Renshaw and Bernard Eisel. And it's always been the way, because as a sprinter in a mountain stage, there's only one place where you can take some time back. That's on the downhills. That's it.
We've just seen number 3, Jonathan Castroviejo, go to the front for Team Sky. He was the rider that stopped on the gravel section yesterday with Chris Froome to give him a wheel out of his bike because Froome had punctured. And when they put it in to Chris Froome's bike, they realised that Castroviejo had also punctured. So then they had to wait for the team car to make the bike change. And they had the rest of their teammates at the front of the peloton, slowing things down. It wasn't a difficult chase at all for Froome.
Well, if you followed Chris Froome's Instagram feed, you'll see that he's quite good-humoured about everything that's happening in this Tour de France. He had a photo sent to him of his crash across the cobbles of Roubaix. He was mid-air, mid-crash. And he said ready to fly into the rest day. Can't wait, bring it on. And then yesterday, that photo with Nieve getting the wheel changed, that moment when you realise the wheel you're getting from a teammate is also flat. So he's able to laugh at his own misfortune, take it all in his stride, and he's looking pretty confident. And his team is looking super strong and ready to do the job ahead of them in this Tour de France, taking control when they don't have the yellow jersey yet, but riding as if they are leading the race.
Which they've done plenty of times in the past. They're going quickly down this descent, but not quite equal to the maximum speed we saw yesterday. The fastest speed recorded on the stage yesterday was that of Geraint Thomas, 97.1 kilometres per hour. Before this tour reaches Paris, we're going to see somebody raise the bat with 100 kilometres per hour. The ton will be reached, and maybe a little bit more than that.
Well, Matt, may even be today that someone reaches a century, hits that 100 kilometres an hour.
That's the average speed for the stage so far. When they rode across this course in June for the Criterium de Dauphiné, it was an average speed of 30.8 by the end of the stage. One of the riders who was in that race is Dan Martin, or was Dan Martin, and he's in this race, and he's already won a stage. That was on stage 6. He comes from a famous cycling family. Let's now get to know Dan Martin a little bit better. They don't come much tougher, if any tougher at all, than the Irishman Dan Martin. No painkillers last year throughout the Tour de France with those significant injuries from such a heavy fall, and he still managed to finish in 6th position in the overall classification. As for how he's faring at the moment, he's in 17th place at 5 minutes and 1 second down, but he's within 2 minutes of the likes of Chris Froome. He's a little more than that behind Geraint Thomas. He's right in the mix for a top 5 finish, and he will, without question, animate the Tour this year. He already has. He was the winner of stage 6, and it was a win that many others were really happy to see. One of the first people to congratulate him, Julian Alaphilippe. When Alaphilippe won yesterday, one of the first people to congratulate him was Dan Martin. They're former teammates, they're rivals on the road, but they're still friends.
Here we have the data of Julian Alaphilippe versus the peloton, and that's the average speed for the entire climb of the Montée de Bissainte. 17 kilometres an hour for Julian Alaphilippe, 1.3 kilometres per hour faster than the peloton. And you pretty much see the difference on the screen. Luke Rowe leading Team Sky up the climb, just riding his own tempo, not concerned about how far ahead that big break was getting.
Doing a fair bit of work on this church, which was built between 1666 and 1672. It's one of the landmarks of Savoie Baroque art. And they've got a fair bit of art within the church itself, and getting a little bit of a touch up on the outside. an area that is famous for its winter sport, also very popular in the summer with events like this, the Tour de France. Plenty of mountain biking in this region as well. Many of the events throughout the 1992, the 16th Winter Olympics were held right in this region. As the stage started today in Albertville, and where they are now, there's plenty of downhill skiing tracks and plenty of cross-country skiing. This is Luke Rowe at the front for Team Sky, followed then by Jonathan Castrovejo. Here he is, Bauke Mollema. Yesterday he conceded 52 seconds. He's been languishing at the back, number 191 from Trek Segafredo. It doesn't look good. Looks as if the injuries from the crash on Sunday are catching up with him.
Yeah, and often we never do find out exactly what's happened or what the specific injuries are to riders until it's become game over for them. They've been dropped multiple times, and then you see them going further and further backwards, and eventually the news comes out of exactly what the damage is they've sustained. And Mollema really struggling yesterday, losing 51 seconds already, and in a group that was quite a way off the back just then. And not looking good for Mollema. Meanwhile at the front, Alaphilippe, little signal to the other two riders. We are turning hard left. Just follow me. I've got the line sorted.
And today, it's a good spot for a camper van. The climb has been closed for a long time from vehicles to be able to go up, so camper vans at the bottom get the shoes on and start walking up the hill in the morning.
Well, there are plenty doing that here on the final climb to La Rosière. Plenty of camper vans around and a lot of people riding up the climb today. So I know exactly what the riders are going through when they hit the final uphill to the finish here at the ski station. Just 20 seconds between the groups, the leading three. As the road now starts to kick up. It's an extremely short valley section.
And that roundabout, you could see that the mountaineer was within a barrel of cheese of Beaufort. That was the idea behind that little bit of art that you saw in the roundabout as they enter this town, which was established way back in the 10th century by Bernard de Beaufort in around about 923.
Well, Matt, I've got a little bit of advice. If you want to be a good climber, take it easy on the cheese.
Did you follow that advice?
Yes.
Did
always.
it help?
No.
It helped. You undersell yourself as a climber. Robbie McEwen won the Australian Road Championships at Buninyong, which has got an enormous climb in it. And a lot of the modern day sprinters complain about actually using that course. That is a tough course. It is well suited to climbers, and Robbie has won there as well.
I would say that if you want to be a good climber, just be born with the right genetics.
Choose your mum and dad really, really well.
Exactly.
12.6 kilometres to the top of the climb. They're the standings in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. Alaphilippe now out to 61 points. Taramay on 36. Serge Pauls is on 34. The man in that group, though, with him, Warren Barguil, the winner of that competition last year, he got his first points today. He's on 15.
And that competition is really just getting started. Only one big mountain stage behind us so far. But Julien Alaphilippe, by being up the road all day yesterday, taking maximum points where he could, and then getting in the break again today, picking up maximum on the first climb, he's taking quite a good step towards winning that competition. One more big mountain raid, possibly on one of the Pyrenean stages, could effectively see him wrap up that competition. We've seen it in the past.
Lawson Craddock, number 13, still in the race, and he's getting better by the day, and he's raising more and more money for the Velodrome in Houston, up over $100,000 now. He set out hoping to raise around about $5,000. Mission accomplished and then some. Similar to yesterday, Robbie, it looks as if we could see the stage winner come from the breakaway. 6 minutes with no urgency back in the peloton. Sky seemed content to let that group battle out for the stage win as they just protect both Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome. This is Damien Gudon in the black and yellow colours, who was in the original breakaway group of 41. He's now been caught, but Luke Rowe has really stepped up the pace through the very, very brief Valley Road.
Well, the downhill in the valley is a part of the course where he can enjoy his work. On the mountains, it's much harder for him. He's not a natural climber, and he's the man that he's put on the front. They set the tempo for as long as possible, but they really plan their stages out, and they'll say to Luke Rowe, okay, you're going to set the pace over the first climb, down the first big descent, get on to the next one, wind yourself up into the red zone. When you're done, you swing off. Next man will take over.
The big group of 26 is about to catch the 3 out in front, and we'll have 29 once again. Again, checks across the shoulder. So too does Barguil. Likewise with Julien Alaphilippe. It's only a handful of seconds there, but they're on the lower slopes of a very difficult climb. This is Tom Scoynes, still at the back in the white colours of Trek Segafredo. Just in front of him in blue is Marc Soler from Movistar.
A little bit further up, Darwin Atapuma, Colombian from UAE Team Emirates. This is the peloton just coming back together. So you saw there's quite a split caused by the pace of Luke Rowe downhill. As the peloton goes into single file on its way down the descent, and you turn off the bottom onto the flat road. Out of that sharp corner, we saw Alaphilippe put Thomas de Gendt in a little bit of trouble through. That's the sort of place that really splits apart. And if you're at the back, you're forced into a high-speed chase to get yourself just back in touch with the peloton as they start to line themselves up for this second climb of the day. A little bit of looking around now, the pace going out of this group.
This is Maxime Bouet in the white colours, who's now come to the front for Fortunato Samsing, a teammate of Warren Barguil. 29 riders in the leading group with 5 minutes and 30 seconds up their sleeve. Guillaume Martin also losing ground, number 211. In front of him is Roman Siccar, who was really good early, super aggressive, and clearly very, very ambitious. Danny Navarro on his birthday. He might get a cake, but he may not get champagne, because at the front, it is Emile Monard who is setting the tempo. Gisbert just behind him, then Warren Barguil. One of the smaller teams in the race, Fortunato Samsing, splitting up the breakaway. They are riding really strongly at the front, the 3 riders from Fortunato Samsing. Alaphilippe is marking Warren Barguil. Full respect for last year's King of the Mountains winner. 16, Pierre Rolland. This is Arthur Fischel, who's also been distanced. Marc Soler finding his first Tour de France a little difficult. It was a great start to the season when he won Paris-Nice, and you wouldn't have expected him to be dropped from this group at this point. Tom Scoynes still holding on at the back. So too is 134, Sergio Pals. He's the best placed overall from this group. 5 minutes and 12 seconds down in the overall standings. So he's the virtual race leader. TJ Van Garderen starting to struggle.
Well, maybe just a case of it being quite a hard acceleration at the front of the group. And TJ Van Garderen maybe just getting caught a little bit far back in the group as it split up. And he's not a man who's explosive on the climbs, rather tempo riding, as we have a change now at the front of the peloton. That's Daniele Benatti from Movistar.
Movistar now coming to the front. This is the team of Nairo Quintana, Mikel Landa and Alejandro Valverde. After yesterday's stage, Vincenzo Nibali said, maybe tomorrow we'll see some movement from Movistar. And the rider from Sky in the white colours at the front of the peloton, behind Daniele Benatti, is a former member of Movistar. That is Jonathan Castroviejo. He knows what to expect.
Well, at the moment, just pegging Benatti, not following the wheel with that big acceleration. And now Benatti, he swings over to the side, tries to pick them back up again, get that tempo moving. I wonder if Alejandro Valverde has designs on a stage win this afternoon. It's a climb and a finish that really suits him. A little bit flatter on the top here as they get to the finish in La Rosière. And for those of you who watched the Critérium de Dauphiné in June, saw that finish where Geraint Thomas, he attacked the rest of the contenders at the top of the climb. Big chain ring, 40 kilometres an hour through the final kilometre. So something right up Valverde's alley.
Loop Road.
At the front. Rowe is done, number 7. Work done for the day.
And there's plenty of damage at the back of the peloton as we see more riders now being distanced. And coming to the front, Movistar starting to appear in numbers. This is impressive. Movistar trying to take Sky on.
And they also would have heard that Marc Soler has been dropped out of that group in the front. It's not going to be his day. So if they want to do something, now is the time to get it started. 5:50 the gap from this group to the front of the race. 5 kilometres to go on the Col de Prix. And after this, just one more climb remaining. So they've really got to start taking time off the break. And they've sent some serious reinforcements to the front.
Bernati on the front, Mikel Landa in second position. In third spot, it's Andre Amador. And as the pace starts to heat up out in front, spare a thought for Mark Cavendish. Mark Cavendish has got just 2 teammates with him, Julien Vermont and Jay Thompson, and they are at 12.5 minutes behind the front of the race. They are in real threat of being eliminated today. This is the front of the race once again, number 92, that is Darwin Atapuma. Well, he was part of the split behind the very front of the race.
This now off the back of the peloton. Luke Durbridge was in the picture there, 60. So a lot of riders being offloaded now under the pace of Movistar.
Laurent Pichon just been dropped. This is Johan Alfredo.
This is Viti from Movistar. He's the biggest figure on that team. He's easy to pick out.
152, David Gaudu. He was in the breakaway yesterday. I suggest the team are just trying to get him to save his legs.
This is Tim de Klerk, 102 from Quickstep. Ridden most of the first week of the Tour de France on the front of the peloton. Simon Gerrans.
This is Paddy Bevan from BMC. This is Oliver Naesen from AG2R Le Mondial. The South African national champion just in front of him. As the yellow jersey, Greg Van Avermaet, has been distanced from the fronts. This will be his final day in yellow. But what a defence it's been from Van Avermaet.
Well, he said it would be, and he had such a big day out yesterday. Spent a lot of energy going on the attack to defend that yellow jersey. And this is par for the course for Greg Van Avermaet. Really went above and beyond on yesterday's stage to do what he did. But when you do that, you will pay the price on the next stage. But a fantastic stint in yellow by Greg Van Avermaet. As at the front, Amador, big pull from the bottle.
Greg Van Avermaet, he's been in the yellow jersey since the end of stage 3. And on every single day, he's been extending his overall advantage. Today, he'll be losing the yellow jersey. And we are just hearing from Race Radio that Bauke Mollema is at the back of the group and being distanced. That's bad news for the Dutchman. He's got Julien Bernard setting the tempo for him. But for Bauke Mollema, his season has been based around the Tour de France. Big crash on Sunday, disappointing for the Dutchman. He's a former top 10 finisher. He won't be in the top 10 in 2018. The yellow jersey indicating the time is 6 minutes and 36 seconds. The important time gap, though, for the breakaway group is to the Froome group, and it's 5:27, their advantage. That's Dani Martinez. This is an attack now. Is that Alejandro Valverde? It is Valverde. He's the first of the big favourites to put any cards on the table. It must force the reaction from Sky.
Well, I thought Alejandro Valverde may have had this stage in his mind. The first one where he really believes he can win the stage. He was close on the Mur de Bretagne, but it's really when we get in the high mountains, Valverde stands his best chance. He's got a lot of work to do. 5.5 minutes behind the lead of the race. Now on the attack, trying to force Team Sky's hand. At the moment, no panic, as Peter Sagan is only now being caught by the group of the big contenders.
He's been out on a training ride by himself, Peter Sagan, and he's enjoying being a spectator on the Tour de France as he's an animator of the Tour de France. Alejandro Valverde is in 3rd position in the overall classification. He's just 48 seconds behind Geraint Thomas. He's been in 3rd place overall in this race in the past. They have to respect that move from Valverde.
They do. They don't have to panic and try and race straight across into the wheel. They know they've got the numbers there, Team Sky, but they can't afford just to let him ride away. They're going to have to track that move, and as Sky so often do, they don't react to the initial acceleration. They just pick it up by a few watts per kilometre and wind people back in. Gianni Moscon now on the front of the peloton. What's left of it for Team Sky.
And how much has Moscon got left? Look at the movement in his shoulders.
I think he doesn't have a whole lot left in him, and it won't be long until we see Michał Kwiatkowski come to the front. Castroviejo is now coming back.
He's returned. Here is Alejandro Valverde, the old warhorse, 13 years on from his first stage victory at the Tour de France. The 38-year-old is still so active.
And at the back, Peter Sagan has just slotted back into this group, just riding his own tempo up this hill, not trying to stay as close as he can to the group in front, cruising up, leaves him with a little bit of extra energy, which he thinks, well, maybe I'll just slot in, follow this group, get a free ride after the top onto the start of the Roselon, then I'll just cruise to the finish. Meanwhile, at the front, it's still Fortunato Samsic setting the pace for Warren Barguil.
Valverde picking his way through the traffic.
Picking his way through the remnants of that big breakaway. This is Pascalon at the back, number 216.
Trying to stick with him momentarily. That is Philippe Gilbert, who doesn't have any numbers on. They've been peeled off or fallen off in the process of the day. Valverde, we don't have an official time check yet. What sort of gap he is managing to open up. What a beautiful part of the world it is. So often you hear various sports talk about the magnificent stadiums that they get to play in. This is the best stadium sport can possibly be played in. This is at the back of the race. These are the survivors just trying to get through. As Magnus Cort Nielsen from Astana that you saw at the rear. Julian Alaphilippe now being distanced. The work that is being done by Fortunato Samsic is paying dividends, and now today becomes a chance for Warren Barguil to make an impact on the battle for polka dots.
This is the toll that a stage like yesterday takes. So good early Alaphilippe, maximum points on the first climb, but certainly starting to feel the effects of that huge ride yesterday that netted him the stage win. Won't be the last we'll see of Alaphilippe in a break. A little bit of a tougher day. And maybe just a bad moment. He might be able to pace himself back on. He tries again, a little re-acceleration. Alaphilippe fought himself all the way yesterday. 2 kilometres from the summit. And this pace being set by Fortunato Samsic really is something.
The problem for Alaphilippe is there's no descent really after this climb. If there was, he would get back, but there's not much of a downhill at all. He's about to be caught by Danny Navarro, who has not once in his career looked comfortable, even when Navarro won a stage at the Volta a España. But what you do know with Danny is you get his best every single day. He always tries his hardest.
Same can be said for Alaphilippe, and his team may attest to this. Sometimes he tries a little bit too hard, a little bit too often. 2 days in a row.
Here are our leaders. This is Gisbert at the front, followed by Barguil. It's then Kangert, and Navarro is being dropped again with the increase in the tempo. Monar is desperately trying to hold on the back so he can help between here and the next line. Marc Soler, he may not have been dropped from that lead group. Perhaps he waited from that lead group, and he's now doing the job for Alejandro Valverde.
Looks over the shoulder, sees Valverde come into the wheel, and then asking, just tell me what pace you want. I've got it. I can do whatever you need.
He is now, according to the race computer, 1 minute and 25 seconds in front of the group that contains Chris Froome, Geraint Thomas, Vincenzo Nibali.
Surely this has got to bring a bigger reaction from Team Sky soon. Alejandro Valverde came into the Tour saying, I'm here to ride for Quintana and for Landa. I'm not riding for GC. But if they let him go too far up the road, I'm sure he'll change his mind.
When we saw Marc Soler losing contact with that leading group, both of us were surprised. Now we're not. This is part of the plan for Movistar, because Marc Soler is one of the best climbers of his generation, the guys who are 23, 24, 25 years of age.
Well, I was very surprised to see him being dropped off that group. Even early looked in a bit of trouble, maybe not in his very best form, but this is certainly a tactic by Team Movistar to try and open up the race, force Team Sky really on the defensive, not just to ride their own tempo they're happy with, but react to the tempo being laid down by Alejandro Valverde. As Barguil comes over the top of the Col de Prix, first and maximum points for the Frenchman, the winner of that classification last year, Serge Pauls. Follows him over the top, the Belgian, for Dimension Data.
He now moves to 35 points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. Meanwhile, Julian Alaphilippe, he won't collect any points on this climb. So the gap now between those two is 26 points. He's in with a chance to move into the lead of that classification tomorrow. Mont Blanc, stunning in the sunshine of July. Incidentally, Mark Cavendish with his two teammates, Jay Thompson and Julien Vermont, they've got a real battle on their hands to reach the start line tomorrow. They're at 15 minutes and 10 seconds behind.
But if they can get to the top of the Roselong at around 20 minutes behind, they will have used slightly less than 2/3 of today's time limit, and they will have done more than two-thirds of the climbing. So they're on track at the moment if they can hold the pace they're on. At the moment, up here, the pace is being set by Marc Soler for Alejandro Valverde. He's now inside 4 minutes from the front of the race.
And Soler is setting such a tempo, he looks like he's got Valverde at a stretch.
And it looks like, according to the race computer at least, there's been a reaction, an upping of the pace in the peloton. Castroviejo it is who still rides on the front for Team Sky. Race computer telling us it's 1 minute and 6 seconds to Alejandro Valverde.
The rider in the black and yellow colours, that's Jerome Cousin, who was in the original breakaway group of 41. He's now been caught. Looked like Marzinski of Lotto Soudal was also about to be caught. More riders now being reeled back in by the main part of the peloton. This is Polanski on the left. That is Maxime Bouet in the white colours, and it was Marzinski. Here comes Soler and Valverde. They're on the march through the Alps.
They're just 700 metres now from the top. This is where we saw that group with Barguil just a few moments ago. But they'll get over the top of this climb. Very short descent. A little bit of a plateau, and then they'll start the climb of the Category 2, which is the Courmet de Roselong. 5.7 kilometres, 6.5%. So not quite as steep as the first two climbs they've done.
They have just over a 1 minute advantage over the Sky-led peloton. And they're catching more traffic up in front. That's Pierre Rolland, that's just in the distance with the hint of pink at the top of his jersey. Marc Soler, Movistar, they always had a plan. They put the youngster in the breakaway, and now he's delivering as Sky are looking for somebody else to do the work. There's nobody else there to do it. It is up to Team Sky. This is Sylvain Chavanel. This is the main part of the peloton. That's Kruijswijk from Lotto NL Jumbo. Dan Martin from UAE. Tolhoek is also there for Lotto NL Jumbo. Perhaps just through the upper part of that climb, Team Sky with some soigneurs on the side of the road, collecting fresh water bottles, getting themselves refueled. These are the leaders on the road. This is Matthias Frank. Gisbert, what a job he's been doing today. Fighting, that was Pierre Rolland, who's trying to stay in contact with Soler and Valverde. Tagged onto the back of them is Søren Carl Andersen. How good is number 36? He's a man for the classics, Flanders, Roubaix in the future. He's at the front of the mountains in the Tour.
He may just be discovering a love for the Tour de France. The young Dane, been very active over the first week, former leader in the white jersey, best young rider competition. They're now on this short descent, which will bring them down to the dam of Roseland. They ride across the dam wall. And there's in fact another col that doesn't rate a mention, no classification. This is a point where three mountains come together: the Col de Pré, the Col de Meraillet, and the Courmet de Roseland.
And look at this, Robbie, at the front of the peloton. That's Magnus Cort Nielsen from Astana, one of the teammates of Jakob Fuglsang. He's won intermediate sprint finishes on stages at the Volta a España in the past. He's a quick finisher. He's climbing out of his skin.
Yeah, he's more a sprinter than anything else. So this is a superb performance by Cort Nielsen on this stage. Look at that main peloton. 25 riders maximum.
And in terms of the King of the Mountains classification, Serge Pauls is also in the mix. He's actually still in second position on 39 points, so he is a factor. Mont Blanc, capped in white as the white jersey today for the best young rider classification. That's been worn by Pierre Latour from AG2R Le Mondial. Guy Martin is in second position in that classification, but Pierre Latour, he won't be trying to defend the white jersey. He might stay in it, but not through trying to defend it, through trying to support Romain Bardet. With the gap still out there on the road between the main peloton with the riders from Team Sky, the breakaway with Serge Pauls, the yellow jersey Greg Van Avermaet being distanced. Serge Pauls on Mandela Day, riding with the orange helmet in honour of Nelson Mandela, is our current race leader on the road. Sky, they take over the peloton once again. Here are our leaders. That's Tanel Kangar from the Astana team now taking a drink. Gisbert rolling through, trying to maintain the momentum for this group. They start the next of the climbs in 2.4 kilometres, the Courmet de Roseland, but it's tough just getting there.
Well, this is that little hidden climb that didn't rate a mention. It's just a very small section of the Col de Meraillet. But it's just another little leg burner on the way through this stage. As the counter-attacking group with Soler, Valverde and Anderson, they ride their way across that dam wall. This high alpine lake. It's just the rarest moment of flat terrain on this stage.
Some of the riders are probably thinking, this damn mountain that we have to go up. 2:05, Danny Navarro rejoins. So too does Guillaume Martin. Survivors. Little hamstring massage there from Danny Navarro. Birthday cake awaits tonight, Danny. Guillaume Martin, number 211. He's the virtual leader in the race for the white jersey, the best young rider. This is Valgren now going through for Astana. Serge Pauls with the orange helmet on, the virtual race leader. And Warren Barguil is coming into his own. Starting to look really positive.
Well, the riders doing plenty of climbing today. You see those small figures on top of the Mont Blanc. They've done their fair share as well. Serge Pauls, he's the virtual race leader at the moment, but as Alejandro Valverde comes closer, he is riding towards a yellow jersey for himself.
He's certainly moving himself in contention for the yellow jersey. Valverde started the day in third position overall. Pauls in 19th position, but that virtual classification just given the time gaps along the road.
Valverde started the day 48 seconds behind Geraint Thomas. He's second overall. Greg Van Avermaet now out of the picture. He is riding around 2 minutes behind this Sky-led group as they enjoy this little piece of flat road lakeside, and don't look over the edge.
Unfortunately for them, they don't get to enjoy it for long.
Le Barrage de Roselong.
As they're about to hit the climb of the Cormet de Roselong. With Europe's highest mountaintop, Mont Blanc, in the distance, standing at 4,808 metres. Castroviejo chasing his former teammates from Movistar. Well, Pols was the lanky figure behind him. The Dutchman's tall, but he doesn't weigh much. Yellow jersey on the side of the mountain. That's what's up for grabs, because Greg Van Avermaet will not be in yellow tonight. We're not sure who will be.
Well, at the moment, Valverde is making a really big run at it, Sergio Pols. He'll be hoping that he can hang in there and take yellow tonight. All hanging in the balance. And after the top of the Cormet de Roselong, after 70 kilometres of racing, such a short and explosive stage, 38.5 kilometres to go, they get themselves a 20-kilometre descent off the Roselong. Very short section of Valley Road, and then the final 17-kilometre climb up to Le Rosier.
Here are our leaders. They're onto the Cormet de Roselong. From BMC, that's Caruso now going through to the front. He's been really smart in this breakaway, Damiano Caruso. We've barely seen him at the front, and he hasn't too often been at the back. He's just been hiding in the middle, not doing any chasing when the group has been split into pieces. He's riding well, searching for a stage win. Alejandro Valverde now is some 800 metres in front of the peloton. Perhaps it's more than that, because that is a gap of 2 minutes. And look at the work that is being done by number 77, Marc Soler. That is phenomenal. Riders on the left, they've been in the breakaway. Perez, also there is Mollard. They can only just look across and watch. They won't hold on for long.
Well, don't just look across. You better accelerate if you want to get somewhat of a free ride. But after they get away off that little flat section along the barrage, lakeside there, they've got that little section of Col de Merrier, about 1.5 kilometres long, and that's where this group finds itself right now. This is our front group.
General classification leader Virtual, number 134, Sergio Pols. They make contact. They're in the slipstream. But for how long? Marc Soler is still the man doing all the work. Valverde, just like all the other big favourites back in that group, he's been sitting the wheel for a while. Gianni Moscon has returned. So Sky waited for Moscon across the plateau. Just passengers are no longer passengers, because Soler is spitting them out the back door. And a pat on the back from Valverde to Alaphilippe, who's all smiles. Thumbs up. Now he's cruising.
That's it for the day for Alaphilippe.
And Alaphilippe and Valverde have had a really friendly rivalry. It's been Valverde who's been the dominant rider at Flèche Wallonne. He's won that race 5 times. Alaphilippe second to him on a couple of occasions. This year, Alaphilippe won and Valverde was second. Many said it was the passing of the baton in the Ardennes. Valverde wants his baton back in the Alps.
Well, maybe that pat was Valverde just sort of saying, you might have got me at Flèche Wallonne, but you still got a bit to learn about pacing yourself. Watch this.
Which he'd be right if he did say that. 12 years.
It'll be a fair comment.
12 years is the difference between them in age.
I think he really appreciates the efforts of Alaphilippe. Winning the stage yesterday, then straight on the attack again today. No regard for his own recovery or the rest of the tour, what's to come. He's just riding kilometre by kilometre and seeing whatever he can get out of it. Here's Chris Froome. Never looks particularly comfortable, but rarely put in trouble.
Exactly. That is the key point. Not overly concerned, clearly, by Alejandro Valverde, as they waited for Gianni Moscon to come back. Now we're seeing the move from Bahrain Merida. That's Franco Palazzotti, followed by the Shark of Messina. Vincenzo Nibali is looking for blood in the water.
Oh, Nibali, he doesn't trust a move off the front by Alejandro Valverde, especially when he's got Marc Soler with him. This is only a Category 2 climb, and Nibali wants to start getting this shut down. I guess he figures Pelizzotti is not going to be the man to do the chasing on the final climb to La Rosière. Use him now, pick the pace up a little bit. Who knows, maybe an attack for Vincenzo Nibali on the downhill.
Do you honestly think, though, that that is the right move for Vincenzo Nibali?
Well, it's not a move that's really costing him energy. He's just using Pelizzotti to set the pace. Just wants it a little bit quicker than Team Sky were riding.
But then what about the fact that this gives Team Sky a chance to sit on the wheels as opposed to spending their own resources?
And that is the downside for everybody else.
Rider still being dropped off the back. Movistar with a couple of riders still in it. Lander is the rider with the bandage on his arm, the yellow helmet, just bobbing away. Nairo Quintana is still in that group. For Lotto and El Jumbo, they've got Steven Kruijswijk and Primož Roglic in the group. Ilnaz Zakarin is still there for Katusha. Had a tough day yesterday, Zakarin, but is looking better today. Yates is still in the group for Mitchelton Scott. Bob Jungels is there, the Luxembourg national champion. Just managed to spot him. He conceded 52 seconds yesterday, but is fighting back.
And it looks like Amador still on the back of the group for Movistar. Sitting somewhere about halfway was Nairo Quintana. But as Team Movistar have thrown it down, tried to lure Team Sky out, create a bit of panic. Well, the ones who have blinked is Bahrain Merida, Vincenzo Nibali, letting Pelizzotti do the work now on the front of this peloton.
Well, Poles in second position there, doesn't look particularly comfortable. This is Simon Geschke, just losing contact. And that is Amador from Movistar, who's still holding on at the back. Number 37, just in front of him, that's Lawrence ten Dam. Soler for Valverde.
Or Soler, he's emptying the tank now.
Did you hear Valverde? Vai. He wants more. Venga.
That encouragement, give me everything you've got until the top of this climb. Empty yourself completely. When you are cooked, I'll take over.
Here are the leaders. This is Warren Barguil. 2.6 kilometres to the top of the Cormet de Roselon as he is on the hunt for more points in the race for the polka dot jersey. He's still got two teammates with him. Rafael Majka, he is fighting his way back to the group that contains Chris Froome. King of the Mountains leader. He might have enough to hold on to that jersey for today, but unlikely tomorrow, Julian Alaphilippe.
Well, he's about to see Warren Barguil take another step closer because they are coming to the top of that Category 2 climb of the Cormet de Roselon, just 500 metres to the summit. Warren Barguil first over the top of the last climb, second over the first climb of the day behind Alaphilippe, and he will go and grab maximum points here, I would say. There won't be much competition for the rest of the group. 5 points on offer at the top of this climb.
Also in this group, Sergio Pals. He's currently in second position in the King of the Mountains classification, but he's not at the front challenging. Barguil just looked across the shoulder, and he's had the nod from Jesus Herrera. I won't challenge. You take the points, Wawa. So he now moves up to 40 points, 21 points behind Julian Alaphilippe, and on target across the next few days to move towards the lead. Good evasive work by Emile Monard to dodge that bidon.
Lucid, concentrated. After all the work that he's done, to then have that presence of mind, be able to manoeuvre like he did, see everything that's happening around him. And Monard, he's survived the climb. A 20-kilometre descent, I'm sure will be enjoyed now after around 3,000 metres so far of vertical altitude gain on this stage. This is the peloton, what remains of it, led by Bahrain Merida, Franco Pelizzotti, and I think also the small figure of Domenico Pozzovivo has popped himself into second wheel in front of Vincenzo Nibali. This is Soler and Valverde.
Almost at the top of the climb. They're just 2 minutes behind that leading group of 13, and they're 1 minute and 22 seconds in front of this group, which is being piloted by Franco Pelizzotti. and they're 1 kilometre from the top. Number 61, Adam Yates, still holding on. And Rudy Mollard, 156 from Groupama FDJ. He was in the break, and he still wants a piece of the action. He's desperately holding on to that group. It's around 1:15 there or thereabouts for Alejandro Valverde, the yellow jersey. Greg Van Avermaet conceding the overall race lead today. Incidentally, Mark Cavendish and his two teammates, Julien Vermont and Jay Thompson, they're at 20 minutes behind. Do you think they'll make the time cut today?
If they can hold the same tempo they've been on, I think they'll make it. Can't afford to blow up, can't afford to have a bad moment on the final climb. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that final climb will deliver as well. Over for Pelizzotti. That final climb, Matt, we drove it last night and we noted those steep sections midway up the climb. The hardest section of this final climb tops out at 5 kilometres to go. After that, it's a lot more even and gradual. So I think the damage can be done in the mid part of the climb. It's a 10-kilometre section where it's rough roads, steep pinches, never a gradual incline, ever changing, lots of corners.
The rider from Cofidis that they just went past, that was Anthony Perez. He was in the break from the start, and he's still got his teammate Herrera in that front group. This is De Gent and Roman Sikar now being caught by the flying Franco, not Pelizzotti, he's been dropped. This is Domenico Pozzovivo.
Pint-sized Pozzovivo. He rounds up Thomas again. He was completely oblivious to the group coming behind him. Pozzovivo didn't know which side to go, as De Gent was only concerned about where am I getting my next drink. They come over the top of the Cormet de Roselon now.
And they've just caught Anderson at the top. There aren't many riders left at all in this group. And Anderson straight away looks for Tom Dumoulin. Do you need anything?
Not much more he can do at this point. 20-kilometre descent. Just be there for Tom Dumoulin if he has any sort of problem. The gap, Valverde to this peloton, 1 minute.
Pelizzotti did a great job early, but then once we saw Pozzovivo come to the front, he had a big impact. These are the leaders. Number 43, gingerly around the corner. That was Gisbert. He's losing contact on the way down.
Well, in trouble on the descent. Done so much work on the way up to split things up for Warren Barguil. Now he's in trouble. Remember a few days ago, the Roads to Quimper, he knocked himself off out of the breakaway, left the road into the ditch and went down. I think he's rattled.
Confidence is in the gutter. Are our leaders, Tête de la Course, front of the race, almost 80 kilometres per hour. Yesterday, the maximum speed was Geraint Thomas at 97.1.
So you can see the difference, a much more shallow descent. When you look at the profile, you can see the difference to the climbs themselves. The climbs at about 7.5%, and this descent more about 5 to 6% on the way down. So a lot more pedalling to be done, even for those in the slipstream like Sergio Pols.
How has number 205, Danny Navarro, done it? He has looked to be at his limit from kilometre 1.
He looks like he's at his limit on the way to sign on.
As soon as he was in the breakaway, he was under pressure, but he fights, he's tenacious, and he stays there.
He's crooked, he's ducking and weaving, he's bobbing up and down, but he keeps on coming back.
He does. Speaking of which, so too does number 72, Andre Amador. Just in front of him, number 6, that is Wout Poels, a man for the final climb to support Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas.
Thomas De Gent has slotted himself into this group, caught at the top of the Roselon. Not much will change during this 20-kilometre long descent, which will bring them to the foot of the final climb of the day.
Still a minute for Valverde. The priority at this point is, let's hope, on the descent at the very least, everybody stays safe. As today marks the 13th anniversary from the death of Amy Gillett, who was killed in a training accident in Germany whilst you were here racing the Tour de France. And the positive side, the big outcome of that horrific tragedy, the loss of the life of Amy Gillett, has been the establishment of the Amy Gillett Foundation, which has done a lot to improve bike rider safety, but also provided a scholarship for Australian female cyclists who are just outside some of those top teams. And the scholarship holder this year is Grace Brown. who raced in the course by the Tour de France yesterday and was at the front for a long time and just missed out on a top 10 finish. So to everybody involved with the Amy Gillett Foundation, congratulations on the work that you've done. And to Amy's family, the Safe family, and also to Simon Gillett and everybody associated with her, our thoughts are with you today.
Well, you can see these long straight stretches on this descent. Now, look in the race book. There's only one little section with about 8 hairpins, and then the road straightens out again. So apart from that one section halfway down, it's almost all straight ahead, aero tuck. You see here at the front, that's Castroviejo for Team Sky on the front of the peloton. They are 3 minutes and 10 seconds behind the Warren Barguil group. And that has been driven over the last 45 minutes or so by the Fortunato Samsic team. What an incredible job they've done to put Barguil in a position to hopefully for them ride his way to a stage win. We said after yesterday, it looks like he's really gained some confidence from being in the group, then placing an attack, even if it didn't work and he blew up. He was there and he felt good enough to at least make an attack. He's on the improve, and this could be a huge moment in the history of Fortunato Samsic.
He has said right from the very start that he's not racing for the overall classification, to try and finish inside the top 10. So at some point he'll lose plenty of time in the hope of getting into a breakaway to then be able to win a stage. What he's not very good at is losing time. He still starts the day in 26th position overall at 11 minutes and 50 seconds down. He's too good for his own good sometimes.
He just loves to race, a little bit like Alaphilippe. They enjoy their cycling, they love to race, they love to be amongst it and try on all different types of terrain. The flat roads to Roubaix, punchy stage through Brittany, like on the Mur de Bretagne, and in the high mountains. And they're a pleasure to watch, both those young Frenchmen.
This is the moment where Alejandro Valverde launched his attack. A huge acceleration as the peloton was moving along at 15 kilometres per hour. It was up to almost 20 for Valverde. That will have put him into oxygen debt, slightly into the red zone. He's then settled into a rhythm. He had a teammate in the earlier breakaway, Marc Soler. Soler waited for him. And from that moment where Valverde made contact with Marc Soler, it's been the young Spaniard Soler who's been doing all of the work. On the road at the moment, Alejandro Valverde is the virtual race leader. He's just on 2 minutes behind the leading group of 13. He leads the race overall by just 8 seconds, but he's a minute in front of the group containing Froome, Thomas, Nibali, Bardet, Yates, and anybody else with ambitions to win this race overall.
I'll put that 1 minute lead over the group of Chris Froome for Alejandro Valverde. On the road, on the final climb, that would be less than 500 metres. They'll still see him riding. Definitely not out of sight. Nervous moment.
There's one.
Someone's gone over the edge. There's a bike there against the barrier.
Bike. It's Matthias Frank. It's one of the factor bikes from AG2R Le Mondial. Fingers crossed, Matthias Frank is okay.
Well, that's a horrible sight to see. The bike against the barrier and no sign of the rider. So fingers crossed for Matthias Frank. This is that section I said midway down. There's a number of corners, about 8 or 9 sharp corners back to back. Then the road really opens up and is completely straight again down the side of the valley. There they are, right on cue. Long straight sections, middle of descent, really technical again. Then it opens up all the way down to the bottom of the valley. They'll then kick on to the final climb.
Another reminder of how dangerous cycling is, and for all the debate about the stage across the cobblestones at Paris-Roubaix, it's descending in the mountains, which is even more dangerous. There's a lot more that can go wrong here than on the cobblestones of Roubaix, and plenty can go wrong on those cobblestones. And it it looks as if he's not prepared to take the risks required to stay at the front. Marc Soler is descending well as Valverde is sprinting out of the corners to stick with him. Is the virtual race leader. Geraint Thomas now the virtual race leader with the gap closing down. But this final climb will be the big decision maker. And for Movistar, they've made it pretty clear Valverde is not the #1 man. It's Nairo Quintana.
Well, coming into this tour, Valverde didn't even put himself as the #2 man. He was here to support Nairo Quintana and Mikel Landa.
This is Matthias Frank, number 24. That is Matthias Frank.
That is very good news.
That is the best sight we will see today.
He looked sore. You just saw him tilt his head side to side, up and down. It's a bit stiff through the neck, but that could have been so much worse.
That cliff, the drop-off, no sight of him.
That gives me goosebumps, just the thought of it. A few years ago, remember Pedro Horillo in the Giro d'Italia, and incredibly lucky to survive.
Of course, we will never forget Walter Wayland, who passed away at the Giro d'Italia in 2010. And the Giro organisers have retired number 108, the number that Walter was wearing at that stage. This is Sunweb. Sunweb now on the tack for Tom Dumoulin. And also today is the anniversary of the tragic death of Fabio Casatelli, the Olympic road race champion from Barcelona in '92.
Yep, that crash back in 1995 on the descent of the Col de Port. In fact, the Porte d'Aspet. Very steep downhill. So we're hearing on race radio 30 seconds for the group of Barguil to that chasing group behind them. So they've really opened up on the descent, and they are almost at the foot of the final climb, which starts around 17 kilometres to go. Valverde and Soler now under the 20 kilometre to go banner. This is the peloton.
They're the 5th group on the road.
And I'm calling it the peloton. It's only about 20 riders.
There'll be bigger groups much further down the road that are just trying to get through to the finish line. But amongst those who are really racing for stage honours and that final yellow jersey, this is the peloton that matters.
Dumoulin has taken 27 seconds on the group of Chris Froome, and he's just 22 seconds behind the group of Valverde.
Here are the leaders on the road. Emile Monard is leaving everything out there. Number 46, when he swings off, he'll come to a grinding halt. Riding in support of Warren Barguil. Next in line, it was Michael Valgren. Also there is Mikel Nieve for Mitchelton Scott. Front group of 5. Rounding it out from BMC is Damiano Caruso. And at 33 seconds behind is a group of 7 that includes Sergio Pals, Guillaume Martin, Tanel Kangert, the 2 riders from Cofidis, Harada and Navarro. Isbert is in that group, so too is Atapuma. We then have the group with Soler and Valverde. Then it is Tom Dumoulin chasing with a teammate. We believe it's Anderson. And then it is what's left of the main peloton with Team Sky doing the chasing.
That is, in fact, Anderson. Race computer confirming that he is the man on the attack with Tom Dumoulin between groups. 20 seconds behind Valverde. Nearly 30 seconds in front of the group with Team Sky. As they're now onto the early slopes of this final climb.
And again, so good. What a joy to watch. He's been enormous in this Tour de France.
We've had the Danish journalist telling us, watch this kid, we think he's going to be a superstar. What do you mean going to be?
Anderson arrives in 2018. Castroviejo at the front for Sky. Poles in second position. Kwiatkowski, Froome, Thomas, Bernal.
Team Sky, they've still got plenty of cards. They're sitting there with a full house.
They've got 5, which is...
They've got
6.
6.
It's more than a full house. Marc Soler, that is going all in for your teammate. He's pulled the handbrake.
Soler puts it into park. Oh, they're without their domestiques, Dumoulin and Valverde, 40 seconds in front of the chase led by Team Sky.
The start of the stage, they rode through the Durand Valley, and it was there in 2016 where Tom Dumoulin crashed out of the race. He got that behind him quickly. He's now very much on the front foot. Pols, Castrovejo, Kwiatkowski just sits back down. It's then Egan Bernal, Froome and Thomas, still with 6 at the front for Team Sky.
Most of the big favourites still in this group. This is Danny Martinez at the back. Uran is not here. That's Boswell, Bob Jungels. 141 is Zakarin. Adam Yates, number 61. This is Mikel Landa in the blue in front of him. Nairo Quintana, leader of Movistar. 121 Astana. That was Jakob Fuglsang.
And Jasper Hansen is the other Astana rider who was there. 2 in there for Katusha, Boswell, and for Education First Drapac, it was Danny Martinez.
The way to the inside of the corner, the steepest part, and hardly got through it. Still clipped into the pedals. Michał Kwiatkowski, the Polish champion, now takes over at the front.
There he is, zigzagging his way before he can find the legs to hit a rhythm. He'll lose 10 minutes or so in the last 10 kilometres.
Easily.
Kwiatkowski, followed by Bernal. Thomas,
and more difficulty now at the back of the group. Riders starting to look ragged at the back.
Bardet with the jersey fully unzipped, and Dumoulin riding away from Valverde.
I'm thinking Valverde, he sees what's coming, easing off the tempo, catch his breath, see if he can slot back into this group.
Bob Jungels at the back of the group. He's poking in and out of the picture. He's got the colours on of the Luxembourg national champion. He's about 5 metres off the back.
Kruijswijk and Roglic in the yellow and black, looking comfortable. The 2 Spaniards from Team Cofidis inching their way across this gap. Caruso on the front, Barguil, Nieve about to be joined by Navarro and Herrada.
And race radio indicating that Adam Yates is at the back of the peloton, also losing ground. So for Mitchelton Scott, their hopes at this year's Tour de France rest on a stage victory with Mikel Nieve in this leading group. And there he is out of the saddle on the attack.
Well, I wonder if he's been told the news and what he should do. I was wondering if he was about to be called back to wait for Yates. Quite the opposite.
There he is, Adam Yates now all on his own. Mitchelton Scott, they made the big sacrifice. They said no to Caleb Ewan, all in for Adam Yates, and his hope of getting on the podium dashed on stage 11.
Well, they'll be hoping that for Adam Yates, it's just a momentary lapse, just a bad moment that's seen him go off the back, and he claw his way back on. But in the meantime, his teammate and the man who is destined to be his lieutenant is going off the front, Mikel Nieve, and the group is breaking up. Barguil is going backwards. Herrada is also dropped. Navarro and Caruso try to get back on terms with Mikel Nieve.
Warren Barguil, number 41. His team has done so much work today. He is under real pressure. The hopes of the...
Adam Yates is losing more and more ground. Valverde now, he is pulled back into the fold. Still has Quintana and Landa in the group. This is Pierre Latour fighting tooth and nail to get himself back on the group. He'll ride like this all the way to the finish line.
When he rode his first Grand Tour, the Volta de España, 2 years ago, on the final mountain stage, he was dropped 4 times by Darwin Atapuma. He caught him again, 500 metres to go, and then won the sprint finish to take the stage. He's not done with yet, Pierre Latour.
Well, as others are going out the back, Michał Kwiatkowski, he is just in charge with that tempo, setting that for Team Sky. Thomas, who looks likely to go into the yellow jersey tonight. And with the yellow sleeves, black jersey, Mikel Nieve is riding his way to a stage win at the moment, opening up the gap. They've got the cars in between himself and Caruso. Herrada He's not laying down. He's inching his way across to Caruso, not giving up the chase.
This is at the back, the big Russian favourite, Ilnaz Zakarin, also being dropped, courtesy of the tempo that's been set by Sky. Yesterday he was in that group with Mollema, Rafael Majka and Bob Jungels, losing 52 seconds. Martinez also been shunted out the back door.
Last man hanging on now is Alejandro Valverde.
Valgren now being caught by the group of Team Sky.
And he looks in control. He looks smooth. He looks strong.
He
Not
is
hardly looking back, only eyes for what's in front of him.
Mr. Reliable, the 34-year-old, and his first season with this team.
Saw him there, just flick it up another gear, staying on top of things. Fuglsang now in trouble off the back. Valgren waiting for him. Bad signs for the team leader from Astana.
The Dane starting the day in 4th position. He's made his ambitions clear. He wanted to reach the podium in Paris. He's really struggling. He's got Valgren to support him, but Valgren was dropped from the front group. Now we see Gorka Izagirre being caught, a teammate of Vincenzo Nibali. The black and yellow, that's Kruijswijk from Lotto NL Jumbo. The red that you can see in that group, that is Nibali. Primož Roglic on the left-hand side of the screen, a teammate of Kruijswijk, he's also here. He is our leader on the road, though, in the hunt for stage honours from the Basque Country, Mikel Nieve.
Well, the
After the stage across the cobblestones, he's now caught his former teammate, and this is Warren Barguil, who says, Tom, we were teammates for a long time, let me give you a little bit of help.
They're very good friends, so Barguil, he's dropped and his chances go, but he is doing what he can for his good friend Tom Dumoulin. Won't last long. 6.5 kilometres from the top now for Nieve. And here is the Spaniard from Mitchelton Scott.
Guy Martin, who won on this mountain in the Tour Avenir. He's been in the day-long break, caught by the peloton with the main favourites. He's now being dropped, but he's put in a very strong ride.
Good ride by Martin. Gorka Izagirre, he was managing to hang into the back of that group at the moment. L'Église Saint-Michel, well, it's in the spirit of the Tour. You saw the polka dots on the other side. As Mikel Nieve, he's approaching that point on the course, and he's nearly through the worst of it.
The king of the mountains sheep, some of them painted in red. The king of La Rosière is proving to be so far Mikel Nieve, but with 6 kilometres still to climb, Tom Dumoulin has a big chance to close it down. This race is on. Here is Tom. He's a minute behind. He's 34 in front of the group who he's trying to get away from.
Also still a danger for Mikel Nieve is the group with Chris Froome. 1:35 to the group of the big favourites. 6 kilometres to go. Nieve is by no means home and hosed.
Gorka Izagirre today, the king of the cramp, surviving. It's been a tough day for the Spanish champion.
But he bobs to the rhythm, still pounding it out at the front. Thomas in his wheel, then Froome. The rest all lined up behind the other contenders. Bardet, Roglic, Kruijswijk, Nibali. Yates is gone.
And Nieve is less than 300 metres in front of Tom Dumoulin. And for the first time, we've seen number 68 look across the shoulder. That is a bad sign.
5 kilometres to go is where he'll take a sharp
Now we're
turn.
seeing attack, and this is Geraint Thomas. It's Thomas who attacks. It's up to the others to respond. Froome watches. What has Quintana got? Dan Martin cannot go. He's going to have to stop at this rate. It's a track stand for Kwiatkowski. The Welshman is well on his way towards yellow.
Well, Team Sky, they're not going to give anyone a free ride. Chris Froome has told Thomas, just go, I'll mark the rest. The idea that this might be a stage where Geraint Thomas gets to yellow jersey, possible stage. Froome for the Welshman is away.
Geraint Thomas has said it's the Tour de France, so you can't have the jersey just because you want it. Well, now Geraint is going out to get it. Bardet, number 21. He goes. But what has he got in the tank? Froome has got his measure. Quintana is the next. Small gap opening up, but Bardet really watching Froome.
Big acceleration by Bardet, and Froome away, keeping an eye on the power meter.
Dan Martin losing ground. Froome now attacks. This is a Sky 1-2 of epic proportions because Quintana is having trouble just sticking with number 1.
Well, how long can Froome maintain, and when will it become too much for Nairo Quintana? He stops with the effort. 5 kilometres to go.
Nibali is at his limit. He's trying to come back across. He's really struggling in the distance. Roglic now goes past him.
When you're starting to struggle, you're in the red zone, the worst thing you can do is try and follow those attacks. Stay steady state, stay in your rhythm, as Dumoulin has now caught Caruso and Herrada, and he is on his way to the front of the race. But look behind, Thomas is almost on the back wheel of Tom Dumoulin.
Dumoulin is in second position on the road. Geraint Thomas is in first position in the general classification.
Bardet goes again. This time, no immediate reaction from Froome. Quintana looks at the English Kenyan to see if he can do it. Froome eventually does. He goes after Romain Bardet. Vincenzo Nibali hangs in. So does Primoz Roglic.
Bardet doesn't have the firepower.
Dan Martin trying to come back in the background.
Not today. He really looks to be at his limit. And now Froome is accelerating in the saddle. We've seen this before. He did this to Quintana in 2013 on Mont Ventoux and just rode the Colombian off the wheel. Martin, we know how tough the Irishman is. He keeps fighting.
Nibali forced to just go to his own rhythm, let the gap open. Quintana covers Froome, so does Roglic, who's super impressive. Romain Bardet already made 2 attacks as he got another one in the bag. Splits them up the middle, the Frenchman, number 21. Meanwhile in front, Mikel Nieve with 4 kilometres to go. The steepest sections of the climb are behind him. This is the chase, Tom Dumoulin, Caruso. And does Dumoulin even know that Geraint Thomas is in the wheel?
Yes, he does, but he's prepared to work with him.
At the moment, it looks more like working for him. Under 4 kilometres to go. 300 metres, the gap on the road. Dan Martin comes back and goes on the attack.
Tenacious Dan Martin. He's so brave, and he's put all the others in a huge difficulty. They've let the wheel go, and this is a massive opportunity for Froome.
Froome goes with Martin. That's the acceleration that the others just could not match. Quintana now turns to Nibali, asks him to do the work, swings back across. This is Froome's moment. He'll go on with it from here.
The other 4, they need to work together. Quintana, Nibali, Roglic and Bardet to try and save. Was dropped. He's concerned about his presence.
All the others just looking at each other as Froome just rides away from them. There's no questions to be asked. It's just ride. Quintana now, a bit more pace, flicks the elbow, and Bardet with another attack. Nibali not willing to do any work. Dan Martin still riding in front of Chris Froome under 4K to go.
Steven Kruijswijk has just rejoined this group. There he is in the black colours, 161 at the back.
On the radio to Roglic, easy, easy, because he's just got back on, but it's no time to be going easy. We're just over 3 kilometres to go. Froome is riding into the distance. He's on the radio himself. Thomas now will know that his team leader is on the way from behind.
Still in the lead position on the road for the stage is Mikel Nieve. It's then 3 pursuers with Tom Dumoulin, Geraint Thomas and Caruso from BMC, who's been the day-long breakaway. It's then Dan Martin and Chris Froome, and then this group of 5 chasing. Quintana at the front, followed by Bardet, Roglic, Kruijswijk, and at the back it's Nibali.
Fighting is killing them. Chris Froome is riding away, and it's Dan Martin doing the work. Martin was dropped, he couldn't follow the accelerations, or maybe he was just smarter than the rest. Pacing himself, waiting, knew it had all stopped, rode himself back into the wheel and straight up and over. And Froome, he's just got always one more acceleration than the rest.
In terms of the general classification, the gap at the start of the day between Dumoulin and Thomas 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Thomas
now,
looking behind to see where Chris Froome is. Here he
is.
comes. Can Dan Martin now hang on?
And the gap is only 20 seconds between Dumoulin and Froome. And Dan Martin, he's twisting and turning on the bike, but he's sticking with the best.
Well, look at the gap now for these chasers. Quintana, Nibali, Roglic, Kruijswijk, Bardet. Bardet's been attacking them constantly. There's no cooperation in this group, and now they are starting to panic. Nibali, he says, well, I've got to do what I can. 2.5 kilometres to go. And Sky have just ridden us out of the wheel.
Indeed, they have. This group of 5 desperate to limit the damage, but they're also on their hands and knees.
Well, just as Sky looked to be getting vulnerable, Kwiatkowski was done. Bernal couldn't do a turn. How do you solve that? Attack. They may have taken a leaf out of Greg van Avermaet's book. Attack is the best defence. Thomas up the road. Froome now on the way across. This group here starting to find some rhythm. But it's Kruijswijk, who was one of the first dropped, who's been setting the pace.
Now Bardet leads them around the corner. This is Nieve. 2 kilometres, 26 seconds. Tailwind to La Rosière. Can he make it, Robbie?
Tailwind to the final bend. That is 1.5 kilometres to go. Then it's into the breeze for Nieve. The car goes past. It always makes you wonder. The gap is so small, they can see him riding just ahead. Tom Dumoulin still setting the pace in front of Geraint Thomas, and Caruso hanging in there, probably giving himself a chance.
So he should be. The virtual race leader, the Welshman, Geraint Thomas. Dumoulin, last year's winner of the Tour of Italy.
Remember what Thomas did in the final kilometre in the Criterium du Dauphiné when the race finished on this exact same stage. The big acceleration rode everyone out of the wheel.
Froome is still at 15 seconds behind Geraint Thomas. This is Egan Bernal.
He's with Landa.
He's on the wheel at Landa. Landa with the damage from the crash on the stage to Roubaix. He is paying a heavy price for that fall.
Well, the damage from Roubaix, and he's now in damage control. Mikel Nieve, the head goes on sideways. He looks into that final bend. It's all straight ahead to the finish from here. 1.5 kilometres to go. He's almost into the village of La Rosière. He can take a look across and look at the chase, and I think he's going to get there.
It will be close. Let's not forget Le Course by the Tour de France yesterday with Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten.
Does Thomas go again and attack over Dumoulin, or just let him set the pace all the way in and wait for Froome to catch up?
He's at 13 seconds in front of Froome on the road.
That's what Nieve's winning chances are hinging on at the moment. Dan Martin working together with Chris Froome.
And for Dan Martin, he's gaining time on people he'd lost time on with his crash a few days ago, and he's moving up the overall standings.
Well, Dan Martin, he was the bravest yesterday. He was the man to attack in the final kilometre of that last climb. Get rid of Uran, Jungels, Zakarin, etc. And now he's offloaded Nibali, Roglic, Kruijswijk and Bardet and Quintana. Last kilometre now for Mikel Nieve.
He sees the kite. He wants the finishing banner. The shortest way home is to the left. If he went to the right, he'd be into the hotels. And here comes the chase, led by Dumoulin. Then Thomas with number 8. 83 from BMC is Caruso. Here comes Froome. He's ditched Dan Martin. And Chris Froome is on his way. Desperately close.
Almost takes the long way on the roundabout as he's trying to get himself back in the wheel of Dumoulin and Thomas, and it looks like he's going to. Geraint Thomas playing the team role, not setting the pace, not attacking Tom Dumoulin, waiting for his team leader to ride his way across.
He's just a couple of seconds behind. They've gone past the commentary tribune, and it's 4 seconds tops. Tom Dumoulin has been doing all the work, and it's Geraint Thomas who is the benefactor.
This is the same acceleration he made in Criterium du Dauphiné at the same place. Has he got enough to get across to Nieve, or can Nieve hold him off?
The beneficiary of the work of Tom Dumoulin, it's Geraint Thomas now. He'll be in yellow. Can he win the stage? And how much time does he have up his sleeve in the overall standings?
Dan Martin battling, trying to get back to Chris Froome. Thomas off the front in search of Nieve with under 400 metres to go.
Froome now has caught Tom Dumoulin.
5 seconds and he's got him.
Nieve has been caught with 400 metres to go. Geraint Thomas, the Welshman, is on his way. He had yellow last year after the individual time trial in Dusseldorf, but this one is even more significant. The grimace is on, the smile is coming, but he's looking for maximum time gains. Geraint Thomas wins, and Geraint Thomas is the new leader of the Tour de France. The Welshman can start to celebrate. Emphatic victory, and now Nieve, he's not worried about second. It was the win that he wanted, but the battle for time is on behind him. Dumoulin has fought his way back to Froome. Froome in second position on the stage. Dumoulin, no, he nabs him. That's psychological. Dumoulin second, Froome in third. Caruso, Nieve, brave Dan Martin.
What heartbreak for Mikel Nieve. The team saw their team leader in Adam Yates get dropped as Bardet and the rest are coming in. Nieve looks set to win. The big acceleration from Thomas. Shades of La Course yesterday. Bardet is leading them in. Nibali, Quintana and Roglic, the losers of the day. They've been foiled by Team Sky. This is Herrada.
Almost a minute. Bardet stops the clock. 58 enormous seconds. This rider coming through now from Lotto NL Jumbo is Steven Kruijswijk. He's at 106. That's bigger than his win last year. Much bigger. And last year's was big.
Well, what a tactic by Team Sky. Just when it looked like they were about to be exposed and run out of teammates on the attack, and Thomas with that final acceleration. We wondered if he was going to do it just like he did in the Dauphiné. Came up too short on that day, not able to catch Bilbao. But this time, it's Dumoulin who settles for second, 20 seconds behind Geraint Thomas. Froome in third. Caruso, gallant all day for fourth. And Nieve, how could he not shed a tear after that one? So close.
The birthday boy, Danny Navarro, across the line. This is the race to defend the white jersey. Pierre Latour holds on to white.
Do you remember about 25 minutes, half an hour ago, I said he'll ride like that all the way to the top?
You were right.
It's not a big, bold prediction to make.
This is the overall standing. Sky at the top of the table with Thomas and Froome. 125 is the gap. Dumoulin is the threat at 144. Nibali, let's not count him out. He's at 214. And then it's Primož Roglic. This is Rein Taaramäe, Sylvain Chavanel, Paul Polanski. And in the pink colours, it is Pierre Rolland.